The guy's name is Lin Fan, and he's the main character in this story. He was abandoned by a girl and then hit by a car. He thought he was about to die, but the desire to live still burned in him. He found himself in a strange place, and a stranger was sitting in front of him and told him to sign something. So he did, and then he woke up, bloodied, and knocked down on the road. The driver of the car approached him and asked about his state of health, but the guy still wanted to understand what kind of illusion it was. Suddenly, the system appeared before his eyes and offered to help him become the #1 genius in the world. The main character was still in the dark. The system evaluated its new host, Carrier Lin Fan, age 22 years. The talent level is low. Recovery is not available. The system was perplexed by the weakness of its host. The guy decided to close the gadget, but the system offered its help. Lin can now gain points by absorbing other people's emotions, such as fear or surprise. Knowing that he didn't have much choice, he decided to try out his newfound ability. He crawled up to the driver of the car and licked her hand. She thought that he was a ghost and fainted. 200 points awarded. Total 210 points. Great healing costs 1,000 points. The guy decided to find more victims to accumulate points and heal. He crawled up to a woman standing in the street and kissed her leg, and she kicked him in the face and ran away. 200 points awarded. The main character was getting worse by the minute, but he was determined not to give up. He is driven by the desire to live. The guy, who was covered in blood, got into the women's toilet, scaring a lot of girls. A total of 1,660 points. Spend 1,000 for the great healing. The healing process started and Lin recovered, but he still didn't understand how this was possible. The guy thanks the system for saving his life. Lin asked her where the system came from, but she refused to answer. The main character has 660 points left. The system suggested that the guy click on the button. In return, he received unnecessary gifts. Received a new skill, the massage skill. The hero was not happy with the new ability and considered it useless. The girls were approaching the toilet along with the police. Lin remembered that he was still in the women's bathroom and asked if the system had any other skills, and in return, the system offered him a 15-second disguise for 150 points. Lin acquired the skill, and the timer started counting down. The girls and the policeman who entered didn't recognize him as a pervert. The system warned that if the timer stops running, all the disguise will disappear. 13 seconds left. The girls asked the main character if he had seen a zombie. He gave a negative answer. 10 seconds left. The ladies were perplexed. 8 seconds left. Lin started to panic as the girls still didn't leave. 6 seconds left. Outsiders decided to look elsewhere. 2 seconds left. The disguise was gone. The guy again thanked the system for saving him. It told him that the product purchased in this section can only be used once or win the item in the lottery, so that it can be used constantly. The system said that it would somehow help him become a god. Lin realized that if he had enough points, then his life could change radically, and all that was needed was to behave unpredictably, because this way you can become an invincible genius. The guy's name is Lin Fan, and he's a student at Shenzhou University. Since his father's death, he has switched to distance learning. Now the guy works together with his uncle and studies. After being saved by the system more than once yesterday, he was in serious trouble. The owner of the store, a friend of his late father, allowed the main character to live in the store. Lin, lying on his bed at night, began to reflect on his fate, which is similar to a situation from a comic book. He was looking at the system interface and noticed a lot of question marks in the talent window, talents that he would have to learn. The guy thought about how all this could be used in the future, whether he should become the lord of the world or become a superhero. Lin's ex texted him not to beg her to come back, because she had found a new boyfriend who was prettier and richer than Lin. Then the main character remembered about the money, and decided to use his recently acquired massage skill to earn money. The guy's clients were mostly girls. The system rebuked Lin, because the system itself was meant for developing talents, not for courting ladies. So the guy decided to spend the whole night playing video games to try to improve his massage skills in a different way. Because of this, Lin was exhausted all day, which was also noticed by the customers of the store, but Lai Shu, the owner of the store, said that it was all because of the guy's hard work. Now the guy has 1343 points left, as a result of which he decided to win a new skill in a random lottery of the system. After a few failed attempts, he gets one of the new skills. Suddenly, Bai Siki, Lin Fan's ex, comes to the store with her new boyfriend Xiao Qiao, who was the first heir to the powerful Xiao family. Xiao decided to come over to mock Lin. He began to throw a large number of various insults at Lin, and in every possible way bantered and rejoiced in his superiority over the main character. While Xiao was bragging, Lin immediately caught a video of him and posted it on the internet. Xiao ordered Lin to delete the video, to which Lin said that it would be very difficult to delete something from the internet. The Xiao family's hair swung at the protagonist, and immediately flew several meters forward from Lin's punch. Bai Siki yelled at her ex, Lin Fan, because he was taking away her happiness, namely money. She had already decided that in the modern world, money is much more than love, so she said goodbye to him forever and went to the wounded Xiao. Uncle Lai told Lin to go and beg for forgiveness together, to which the other flatly refused, because this is his problem and only he has to deal with it. My uncle was proud of his nephew. Xiao, recovering from the blow, set his sixes on Lin, but all of them were quickly knocked out. Everyone was shocked by Lin's strength and technique. Lin himself was very happy with his newfound skill. Boxing skill. 1 star out of 5. Suddenly, a lady got out of the car and praised Lin for being able to deal with 2 martial artists. The lady was Xiao Mai Mei, a third-year student at Shenzhou University, president of the Taekwondo Club, and Xiao Qiao's older sister. She decided to challenge the guy, but Lin didn't want to fight her since that wasn't his goal. Anyway, she quickly ran at Lin and started her series of kicks. The main character could only stand in the block. The girl was surprised that the guy was able to block her attack, so she decided to fight at full strength. She took off her shoes and knocked them over on the asphalt, which immediately cracked under their weight. Lin is shocked by the heavy boots Xiao Mai Mei used to fight in before. With lightning speed, she started her series of attacks again, but the main character could still block them, which made Mai even more surprised. Lin, realizing that he will not last long if he only defends himself, decides to make a sudden counterattack, but it turns out to be useless, because of which Lin breaks the bones of his arm. The guy is completely perplexed, because the system should raise geniuses, to which she replied that genius does not guarantee invincibility, and therefore you need to train a lot. The main character began to receive blows after blows, which caused him to remember this feeling, after which he was knocked to the ground. Mei threatened him if he didn't apologize immediately, to which Lin said that they should apologize, because it wasn't his fault, he didn't start it first. Mai swung her leg, and Lin started blaming himself for playing video games all night and not being in the best shape because of it, and tears started rolling down his face. Suddenly, the guy remembered about one of his skills and decided to try it in battle. He took hold of Mi's leg and used his massage skill, pressing down on those points of the leg that caused ecstasy in a person. Mi, who was completely euphoric from the massage, began to collapse from complete relaxation. She began to feel weak and happy at the same time. She didn't have the strength to pull her leg away and finally fell to the ground. Lin dusted himself off and told her to thank him for the treatment. Everyone was dumbfounded by what had happened. Xiao Qiao became afraid of Lin and started blaming himself for his stupidity when Bai Siki, on the contrary, shouted and said that she wouldn't change her attitude towards Lin, no matter who he defeated. The main character understood her point of view and, confident in himself, said that he does not stop her, because from now on he will only look to the future, and at this point he also says goodbye to her. Uncle Lai saw how much his friend's son looked like his father. Later, Li noticed many plates of dumplings in the kitchen, which were actually left behind as a result of several failed attempts in the random lottery system. In order not to waste any good, Li decides to sell these noodle cups. After the first sale, he hears a strange sound in the hall, but when he went out to check, he was completely horrified. Shenzhou University. Lin sits at his desk and doesn't understand where his points are coming from, because he didn't do anything supernatural. Elsewhere, an elderly man who has seen Lin and Mai fight is on the phone with one person, saying that he has found the right person. The voice from the phone, in turn, expressed surprise at how the student was able to defeat members of one of the most influential families, to which the old man replied that he had his own methods. Shenzhou University. Lin is sitting at a desk, listening to a lecture and studying the system's assortment. He had 2711 points left and was thinking about how to spend them wisely. He noticed that with each subsequent purchase in the system store, the price of the item increases by an additional 0 at the end. The main character asked about one of the products in the system's assortment, to which the system replied that it could not disclose the details of the product if its carrier was not in danger. Lin realized that due to such conditions, where the product's properties are unknown and the price increases 10 times after buying the product, points will need to be spent with extreme caution. After the recent mess, Lin remembered that he also had problems with one of the most powerful Chao families. Therefore, the guy asked the system about the available ways to improve talents, and the system replied that there are only 2 ways, and both of them are not easy. The first method was to perform special tasks of the system, but they were highly complex and were not available at the moment. The second method was to buy spring mushrooms. However, after the system said this, it realized that it had broken its rule of not disclosing product details. Lin laughed at the genius of the system, which forgot about its own rules and received an electric shock for this. The teacher who was giving the lecture immediately yelled at Lin for interrupting his class. The other students started whispering and calling Lin crazy. Only Lin's desk partner, who thought that Lin was just upset that a girl had left him, decided to cheer up the main character, saying that there were still many other girls in life and there was no need to despair so much. Suddenly, Xiao Man walks into the classroom and tells the teacher of her intention to attend his classes. Lin was filled with fear when Mai entered the classroom, as he thought that she had come to take revenge on him for the last time. Mai walked between the desks, and the other students were taken aback by her irresistible beauty. She walked over to Lin and pushed his desk mate aside. Those who were sitting nearby thought that Mai had come to teach the main character a lesson. However, Mai, after a bit of hesitation in front of Lin, just sat down next to him, causing a violent reaction from the surrounding people, who noticed the strange behavior of the Chao family member. Lin thought that Mai had come to take revenge and decided to keep calm, so as not to provoke a conflict in any way. After an awkward silence, Mai sternly asked the teacher why the lecture had stopped. Then the teacher came to his senses from surprise and began to continue teaching the lesson. Lin steeled himself to ask Mai directly why she was here. Mai awkwardly responded by saying that she had decided to choose medicine as an additional subject. Lin immediately sensed the lie in her words. He decided to ask her, in order to get her out of the water, that her choice of medicine was reasonable, but why she would need veterinary lessons. But Mai didn't answer. When there was no clear answer, Lin directly told everyone to forget about yesterday's incident and go their separate ways. Mai, to Lin's surprise, put his hand on her leg and asked him to teach her the art of acupuncture, a technique Lin had used on her in the fight. Enticed by her beauty, Lin wanted to do so, but the system cooled his ardor with its electric discharge. So Lin lied, saying that he couldn't teach her this art, as it was an ancient family secret. Mai, unsatisfied with the answer, begged Lin to teach her the art, telling him that she recognized him as a mentor. Lin, who was already unable to stop himself from thinking dirty thoughts, was once again hit by the system's electrical discharge. Mai, seeing this discharge, thought that there was some kind of love spark between him and her. Suddenly, Xiao Chao and William, the martial arts teacher, burst into the classroom. William, in a fit of anger, hits the dog, which was previously sitting on the teacher's desk, so hard that it flew several meters up. Seeing this, Lin runs to help the defenseless animal and catches it on the fly. At the same moment, William swings his leg and hits the line, since the second one managed to block the blow. Lin, in all seriousness, accused William of beating an innocent animal, and said that the only target was him, not the dog. There is a sense of tension in the classroom. All the students were anticipating a fight between William and Lin. Xiao Chao accused Lin right in front of everyone, saying that Lin had bullied Saiki, Chio's girlfriend, and beat up anyone who tried to stand up for her and protect her. William, who heard this story from Chao, in a fit of anger expels Lin Fan from the university. Lin was completely taken aback by the words he had just heard. The other students looked askance at Lin, who they thought was the main villain in this class. Lin tried to defend himself and prove his innocence, but Chao, with a malicious grin, said that he had proof to the contrary. He showed Lin a video from the cameras, which showed Lin beating up Chao and his friends with impunity. The main character was furious. Chao, feeling superior, added that at any moment, the Chao family could demolish Uncle Lin's shop. Lin was shocked by Chao's words and couldn't even move. Chao gave him a note containing the address Lin needed to go to. William and Chao left as Lin, who was going to be desperate, just stood there and said nothing. After class, Red Light District. The building where illegal fights for money were held, the place indicated in the note. Lin arrived at this very spot and was hailed by Chao, whom the protagonist hadn't noticed when entering the building. Chao told Lin that if he defeated one of the strongest fighters in the arena, the Bazooka Ghost, he would forgive him everything. Lin knew that he didn't have much choice, so he agreed to this deal. Chao nominated a new challenger and Lin stepped into the ring. According to the rules of illegal fights, the opponents shook hands at the beginning of the fight. Both War, Lin, and Ghost respected their opponent's strength. One of Chao's girls asked him why he gave Lin a chance, to which Lin replied that it was more interesting, and he wasn't going to forgive him for anything. Chao added that it wasn't enough for him to ruin his victim's school and home. He wanted more, so that the victim would suffer more and more painfully. In response to this, Chao's girlfriend only affectionately called him cruel, which Chao liked. The fight began, and the ghost quickly ran at Lin and hit him with its signature punch. Lin was able to block the ghost's attack, but his arm was still badly damaged. The system said that Lin's boxing talent wasn't good enough to fight at the level of illegal fights. Lin, summoning all his determination, only said that he needed to punch the ghost in return. Lin remembered how he had promised his father that he would graduate from university, and his uncle, who had always helped him after his father's death, was very dear to Lin, and he didn't want his uncle's store to be demolished because of his loss. After these thoughts, Lin steeled himself and decided to try the same trick as with Maddie, namely the massage skill. However, the ghost, realizing what his opponent was up to, said that he knew about Lin's acupuncture technique. Lin, even after the words of his opponent, decides to proceed according to the old plan. Ghost, who was raining down a large hail of blows on the guy, suddenly hesitates, which is why he misses Lin's counterattack. All the spectators were shocked by what was happening. The ghost began to shake violently, which was also noticed by the others, but this trembling was not due to anger, as the commentator thought, but because of the pain in his stomach. Lin asked his opponent why he was frozen, but the other man didn't understand what was happening to his body. Because of his opponent's inaction, Lin slaps him in the face, causing everyone to be shocked. The ghost, angered by the student's outburst, decides to put all the force into his punch, but because of the growing pain in his stomach, he couldn't even hit. The ghost stood still and couldn't move, while Chao shouted at his fighter and urged him to finish Lin off quickly. The ghost knew that if he left the ring to go to the bathroom, he would be considered defeated. Therefore, he decides to use his technique to calm his stomach and give him an extra 5 minutes, which would be enough for him to win. However, Lin gives the slap, which caused the audience in the hall to be dumbfounded, and the ghost was in a rage, but because of the pain in his stomach, he could not do anything and only received a new series of slaps. An enraged Chao yells at his fighter, accusing him of being useless. Suddenly, the ghost's mask falls off. The ghost turned out to be a foreign teacher, William, which Lin wasn't surprised by. Everyone was at a loss as they didn't think that a professional martial arts teacher would participate in activities like illegal fights. William knew that with his identity revealed, his entire career could be ruined. After making a strange sound from his body, the commentator and the rest of the audience thought that it was the sound of tearing muscles, meaning that William was fighting at full strength. But in reality, it was the sound of William's stomach making itself felt more and more by the second. Lin told William that there was no point in putting up with it, because even during the handshake, he had pressed William's dot, which provoked a violent reaction in his stomach. Lin also added that the longer William endures, the stronger the further explosion will be. Meanwhile, May, who found out what Lin was involved in, ran towards the illegal fighting building. When she got there, she violently attacked William, whom she didn't recognize at first, and also violently told him to get away from his man, Lin. Everyone was surprised by what was happening. Lin, realizing that if May finishes off William, then he will not be counted as a victory, decides to stop her. However, in an attempt to stop Mai, Lin accidentally kisses her, which causes great embarrassment in the girl, from which she faints. Everyone was shocked, especially Cheo, who was pained to see his enemy, Lin, kiss his own sister. William, who was already suffering from severe incontinence, went over to Xiao and released all the waste products. There was a deafening silence in the hall from what he saw. After that night, illegal fights were suspended, and Xiao Chao stopped eating popcorn for good. House in Shenzhou. A young girl was talking to the voice on the phone, discussing recent news about what had happened. The voice on the phone said that Lin probably only managed to defeat the ghost because of one thing, the map of the dragon territory, which Lin himself was a potential carrier of. The girl replied that this couldn't happen because the map of the dragon territory was a valuable treasure of the alien group, of which she was a member, and that she couldn't take any action because she was too far away. She, sitting next to her victim, swung her cleaver and said that Tian Hong Gang's group would take care of all this. After that, she kills her victim, because for this girl, murder was an acceptable measure. Lin Fan was being hunted because he was a potential owner of the Dragon Territory map. A subordinate wearing glasses was communicating with his boss. He said that number 3 and 4 were sent to capture Lin, but since they are known for their cruelty and bloodthirstiness, Lin was most likely already doomed. Lin strolled through the city at night. After fighting illegally, he had gained a lot of points, so he decided to spend some of them on the spring mushroom, which could improve one of his talents to the maximum level. However, Lin didn't dare eat the mushroom right away because of its specific appearance, and remembering that it was already late, the guy went to his house. In front of him, he saw his home, Uncle Li's shop, lying in ruins. Lin was completely taken aback by what he saw. There were 2 unfamiliar individuals standing next to him. They turned out to be members of the group Chen Honggang, King Long, number 4, and Bai Hu, number 3. King Long, in order to somehow amuse himself, decides to mock the little girl, who, in turn, decides to fight back, which immediately goes on a flight. Noticing what is happening, Lin quickly catches the girl. The girl's name was Lai Xiaoying. She was Lai Shu's daughter and Lin's best friend. Xiaoying tearfully said that when she came home from school, she noticed broken glasses in the store, and her father was not there, and then those 2 strangers came. Suddenly, King Long called out to Lin and said that Lin was in the wrong place. Lin himself did not understand anything, because Cho promised him that after the victory, everyone would leave him alone. This situation greatly infuriated Lin, so he began shouting to ask King Long why they came here and where his uncle had gone. King Long only grinned in response and said that Tian Honggang's group, which he was in, could do anything. Lin's words made him lose his temper completely, and he was overcome with anger. He lunged at King Long, but King Long blocked the blow with ease, and even the acupuncture technique didn't work, which surprised Lin greatly. After that, King Long said that it was impossible for Lin to break through his sturdy body with his fingers, and threw Lin several meters forward with his punch. King Long was disappointed in his opponent's strength, as he expected more from someone who was able to defeat William. Xiaoyin, in order to somehow help, decides to also help his friend, but instantly flies away from King Long's blow. It was painful for Lin to watch his best friend get beaten up, but there was nothing he could do as the damage from the blow made it impossible for him to move. Suddenly, Bai Hu turned to the guy, suggesting that he might be from a military family due to his tenacity. But she also added with a smile that only losers were accepted as soldiers, which Lin strongly disagreed with. She went up to him and swung the knife. She decided to punch him in the head. Finally, she said that Lin should not have contacted the Xiao and Tian Hong gang groups for nothing. Lin managed to cast a great healing spell before the impact, which Baihu didn't expect, but she still hit him right in the head. Members of the group, who thought that the case was over, began to disperse. Meanwhile, the spring mushroom that Lin hadn't eaten at the time got into his mouth, causing Lin to instantly stand up, as if nothing had happened. Baihu was shocked by what she saw, as she didn't see a person who would stand up calmly after being stabbed in the head. The system said that the boxing skill had been upgraded to the maximum level, and that Lin was now at the level of a world lightweight champion. In another place, a subordinate of the boss was traveling. He was notified that Lin had a map of the dragon territory, and it was necessary to pick it up. But knowing the numbers 3 and 4, he thought that Lin was already dead. When the boss's subordinate arrived, he saw Lin beating up King Long and Baihu. In a fit of rage, Lin launched a hail of punches at King Long, causing King Long to be unable to block them. Baihu, in turn, was injured, and Lin broke one of her arms, and then the other for symmetry. After brushing himself off, Lin was about to leave when a subordinate of the boss called out to him. With a malicious grin, he told Lin to hand over the map that Lin had received from his father. However, Lin himself didn't understand who the stranger was or what he was talking about. The stranger ordered Lin to hand over the map, but the other man didn't understand what it was all about. Lin realized that this stranger might have something to do with the 2 people he had knocked out recently, so the guy demanded compensation from the stranger. The stranger was not satisfied with the answer and said that he would somehow beat the information out of Lin, and he also warned him that he was much stronger than the other 2. Lin wasn't affected by the stranger's words, and he wasn't afraid. Meanwhile, a young girl was talking to someone on the phone. The voice on the phone told her that King Long and Baihu had been defeated by Lin, causing her to be shocked. She said that Tan Hong Gang's group was quite weak, since they couldn't even handle a student, and suggested that they would need her help as a member of the Anian group. However, the voice on the phone refuted her assumption, and said that he had sent her to task number 2, Shuk. After these words, the girl calmed down, as she knew Shuko, who was one of the masters of his craft. Lin notices that his opponent is using telekinesis. System said that Lin's opponent is a cultivator, a person who has supernatural abilities that are very few on Earth. Shuk shoots a knife at close range to Lin's head, which the other didn't expect. The cultivator warned the protagonist, saying that if he didn't reveal the map's location, he would aim for his face next time. Lin wasn't intimidated by his opponent's words, because he knew that no matter how powerful the punch was, if it couldn't reach the target, it was useless, and with that, he charged at Shuka. Suddenly, Lin freezes when Shuk is standing right in front of him. Zhuk explained to Lin that without the ability to use K energy, there was no point in fighting against a cultivator. Zhuk explained that the real purpose of the knife he threw earlier was to surround Lin with lines of Kai, which created a trap that Lin couldn't move from. Thanks to this, Zhu could completely control Lin's body. Elsewhere, Special Forces, the elite of Wushu University, surrounded a dangerous criminal who was a young girl from the Anian gang. She quickly attacked the Special Forces, who had nothing to oppose her. She often compared herself to Zhuk, as unlike him, she killed quickly when he liked to torment the victim. Zhuk begins to mock Lin, putting him in various strange poses. The cultivator again orders Lin to hand over the map of the dragon territory, but Lin still does not understand what is being said, because his father went missing and could not give anything away. Jutsu, dissatisfied with the answer, tells Lin that he is the main expert in obtaining information in the Chan Hom gang group, and if Lin does not tell about if it is located on the map, then it will break its ribs. Lin, not going to give up, decides to get out of Zhu's trap, which he almost did. Such an escapade greatly surprised the cultivator. Lin asked the system about other options for escaping the trap, to which the system replied that there is one exit that can be purchased with the remaining amount of points, but only this thing has a time-limited effect. The main character immediately agreed. Suddenly, Zhuk was about to break his ribs when a man flew out of the sky, stopping the fight between Lin and the cultivator. Zhuk knew the man who interrupted his torture. It was Poison Hand, the Zhao family's security chief. He told Zhuk to leave Lin alone, or else he would stand up for him. Zhuk asked him why he was protecting Lin, but Poison Hand only told him to get out of here. Zhuk, who wasn't going to pass up the chance to obtain the Dragon Territory map so easily, was about to attack Poison Hand, but he was interrupted by an old man who came around the corner. The old man was Elder Zhao, the founder of the Zhou group. He told Little Zhu, as he called Shuku, to leave Lin alone. Meanwhile, Lin transforms into a girl using the camouflage ability. Zhao, the only one who did not notice this obvious substitution, takes the girl and says that he will take care of her and her safety. With these words, the camouflage time runs out, and Zhao notices Lin in front of him, which makes the elder turn inside out. Zhuk realizes that the odds are not on his side, so he temporarily abandons his attempts to capture Lin. He turns to Lin for the last time, saying that his father should have left him something with a map, and he also tells about the existence of all 5 such maps. The Dragon Map, Map of the Sand, Water Map, Map of Acupuncture, Feng Shui Map. Leaving on his bike, he adds that he will return in 10 days to collect the map, otherwise he will kill Lin. The protagonist wanted to ask Zhuk more about his father, but Zhuk had already gone too far. Lin suddenly wondered if the map Zhuk had mentioned might be the reason for his father's disappearance. Then the guy remembers his childhood. He rarely saw his father, as he was often at work, and received many awards and certificates for his achievements. To Lin, his father was the ultimate hero. The last time Lin saw his father was when he was still in the 3rd grade. Then, in honor of one of the achievements of the father, the villagers prepared a solemn meeting and waited for his return in the morning. Lin was very nervous about his father's arrival because he didn't even know how to address him. He didn't want to call him too affectionately or too formally, so he decided to just call him Papa. But when his father arrives, Lin, who doesn't expect it, still calls him Daddy. Today, Lin learned a little more about his father and got into another mess. Lin, Xiaoyin, Elder Zhao, and Poison Hand were all sitting in the building, each doing their own thing, all except Lin, who was curious. He asked Zhao about what was going on, and Zhao said that his man's name was Meng Gan, and Lin himself was in deep trouble because he had offended the Xiao family and was suspected of having a map of the Dragon Territory that the Aning organization was trying to get. Wu Lin then asked why the Zhao family was helping him, to which the elder replied that the main character was a worthy candidate for betrothal to his granddaughter. Xiaoyin, who was sitting next to her, congratulated little brother, as she called Lin, on finally being able to find a girl and not quietly playing with himself at night. Lin was enraged by these words and accused Xiaoyin of lying. Then Lin suggested that all this was just to protect Zio's granddaughter, to which the elder himself replied that he needed a real guy, and not just a bodyguard. Lin still didn't understand why it was him, but the elder explained that the boy and his granddaughter were very similar and would be perfect for each other. However, the elder mentioned one more thing, so he asked Meng Gan to take Lin to the dungeon. There was a huge list of names, the number of which was about 1,000. Lin assumed that these were all the names of Zhio's granddaughter's past lovers, but the elder refuted his theory. Zhao revealed that the names written here are a list of all the girls he has slept with since he was 18 years old. Because of this, all the lovers of his granddaughter turned out to be descendants of his family. The elder was even sent a warning about the threat of overpopulation. Meng Gan also took care of Zhio's granddaughter, which the elder liked and was happy with, but only until he noticed Meng Gan's mother's name on his list. That's why he chose Lin, to help his granddaughter get the love she always lacked. Lin was about to leave, realizing the absurdity of the situation, but Zhao said that his family had a map of the Dragon Territory that Lin needed very much, because if Lin didn't get it, Zhuk would kill him. Therefore, the main character, after a short persuasion, decides to cooperate with the Zhao family. But before that, Meng Gan, playing the role of the younger brother, wanted to test the strength of the future groom of Zhao's granddaughter. Lin initially didn't understand why he was playing the role of the younger brother, but Meng Gan replied that because of the poison in his body, he looked much older than he really was, so Meng Gan was only 19 years old. So he challenges Lin to a fight, and if he wins, Meng Gan will give his blessing for the marriage, which Lin does and wins without much effort. Lin, Joanne, and Elder Zhao are walking around the house. The latter says that his granddaughter is currently on a business trip and will only arrive tomorrow, so he has prepared 2 guest rooms for Lin and Soane to stay in. Soane was very worried about her missing father, to which Zhao reassures her and says that his man is already investigating. Everyone says goodnight to each other and goes to their guest rooms. Lin is about to take a rest, tired out, when he suddenly notices a maid who says she's here to make his bed. Meanwhile, the father of the Xiao family punishes his son, Xiao Chao, for reckless behavior and accuses him of having his daughter locked herself in her room and behaving strangely. Suddenly, the youngest son tells his father that he has good news from the spies in Zhao's group. This son's name was Xiao Kong, and he was the 3rd heir of the Xiao family. He provided a flash drive with secret data, claiming that all this is worth billions. Lin was waiting for his bed to be made up, and was getting more and more excited by the beauty of the maidservant, but the system, noticing the jump in his pulse, decided to cool Lin's ardor with a stun gun. The maid, who had finished her work on the bed, offered to help her master in some other way, but Lin refused. Suddenly, the system notified Lin about a new quest. Quest to find the lost girl. Difficulty 3 stars. Activation after completing an additional task. Find the secret hidden on Fen Xiaoman's body in 10 minutes to activate the mission. Lin, thinking that the girl in front of him might be the same Fen, decided to ask her, and she gave a positive answer, surprised that Lin knew her name. The main character remembered that the system talked about 2 methods of improving skills, and that one of them was completing quests. Since Juke was going to come to Lin in 10 days, he wanted to make a dash for the skill as quickly as possible to defeat this cultivator, because he didn't want to give up the card that might be his father's inheritance. Lin was determined to score points and complete the quest. The system initially thought that its host was just trying to go after women once again, but Lin replied that it was all for the sake of the quest, after which the system apologized for such baseless accusations. The main character noticed that he suddenly began to accumulate points, although he did not do anything supernatural. Lin then stopped and politely declined a bedtime story from the maid and asked her to come out. Then Meng Gan and Elder Zhao suddenly popped up, congratulating Lin on successfully passing the test. Zhao revealed that all of this was intended to test Lin before introducing him to his granddaughter. He revealed that the maid Lin had previously been with was his granddaughter's personal maid, and that she was married, so she was asked to seduce Lin. The main character was overly grateful to Zhao, but inside he knew that just a little more, and he would have given away himself and his true feelings and intentions. The elder said that, in fact, his granddaughter was at home all the time, and since Lin had successfully passed the test, he decided to introduce him to her. Suddenly, a charming young girl walked into the room. It was Zhao's granddaughter, Lingming. Lin was shocked by Lingming's beauty, but he still had the feeling that he had seen her somewhere before. Lingming recognized Lin. The last time they met was when Lin was near death and gaining points to use the Great Healing. Then Lin, who would be a living corpse, licked Lingming's leg. The main character realized that the situation was serious and he needed to think of something, otherwise he would lose the trust of the Zhao family. The system reminded Lin that he only had 30 seconds left to activate the quest. Then he turned his attention to Fen, who was about to leave the room. At that moment, he quickly rushed to Fen's side to find out the secret of her body and activate the quest. Lin ran to Fen and asked her to stop, but she only ran away. Lin then realized that there was something valuable about Fen that she was trying to hide. To stop the maid, Lin kicks the floor, causing it to collapse and causing Fen to lose her balance. Lin manages to grab Fen. 13 seconds left. Fen and Lin both notice a red flash drive that has fallen out of the maid's clothes. 12 seconds left. Fen tries to get out of Lin's grip, but without success, Lin holds on tightly. 11 seconds left. Lingman, who thought that the guy was bothering her beloved friend, decides to teach him a lesson by equipping her mechanical gloves. Lin decided to ignore Lingming and focus on the flash drive, since that was his main goal. 6 seconds left. He knew that if he hurt anyone, it would only make the situation worse. 5 seconds left. Lin remembered that Fen is a married woman and also a professional in her field, so he decides to use acupuncture techniques to relax Fen's body and take the flash drive without hindrance. 4 seconds left. He pushes on Fen's points, causing her to collapse with pleasure. 2 seconds left. Lin takes the flash drive, so the quest is activated. After that, he is attacked by an angry Lingming, who despised Lin after everything she saw. The main character tried to explain himself, but Zhao's granddaughter didn't listen to him, so Lin broke one of Lingming's gloves. So she swung her other hand, but Elder Zhao suspended their duel. He asked Lin about where he could get the company's flash drive, to which Lin replied that it had fallen out of Fen's clothes. Then the elder decided to take a look at the contents of the flash drive. The flash drive stored data about the patent for a new phone developed by Zhao's company. Lingming asked why Fen decided to run away with the secret data, to which she burst into tears and replied that her daughter had signed a contract with the Xiao family, which was why she was now imprisoned by them. So Fen decided to work as a spy for the Xiao family in order to save her daughter. Everyone was shocked as they didn't even know about the existence of Wu Fen's daughter. Quest to save a missing girl. The execution time is 2 hours. Description: rescue Fen Xiaoman's daughter and other girls from drug slavery on KTV until 2100. Reward: free 3 summons in the Roulette of Good Luck, opening an additional product of the maximum level in the product store. Lin then realized that the mission was directly related to the current situation. Fen said that because of the rats that gnawed the preservatives, she became pregnant, and that because of these same rats, her husband died. At that time, she tried to raise her daughter properly, but she was not very good at it, because her daughter got involved with bad company. However, the Fen daughter wanted more, so she owed a huge sum to the Xiao family. And since she had nothing to pay the debt with, she was forced into slavery on the KTV. Fen tried to rescue her daughter from captivity, but the debt was too great, and in order to somehow save her daughter, she was offered to work as a spy for the Xiao family. With such a story, the elder angrily ordered Lingming and Mengan to go to the KTV and rescue his granddaughter, whom he had only recently learned about. Lin also wanted to join the mission, but he was not allowed in, as the elder was waiting for Lin to answer his questions. When they were all gone, Zhao asked why Lin had molested his granddaughter and then his maidservant. Lin couldn't tell them about the system. He knew that if he couldn't convince the elder, he would lose the support of the Zhao family, which was extremely important to him at that moment. Meanwhile, at KTV, Mengan and Lingming were going to pick up their friends, but they were met by a woman. She threw a few barbs at Mengan, causing him to snap and attack the woman, but she was able to block his blow with ease. Then she ordered her people to close the main entrance, and her new guests decided to show their hospitality. The girl introduced herself as Madame KTV, Luna, and was a member of Tyne Hongdang's group. Annoyed, Mengan said that he suspected Liu Nu of being a slave, so he called the police and demanded the girl's immediate release. However, the woman was not at all afraid of these words, and called Officer Chen, who was a regular customer of KTV. The excited policeman replied that he considered KTV to be a perfectly legal establishment, and that he would not tolerate anyone slandering the place. Mengan realized that the Xiao family also had many connections with corrupt police officers, which was why this family got away with everything. The police officer who heard Mengan's words yelled at him for insulting what he called his honest nature. The besotted man told the ladies that he would deal with uninvited guests, as he is the pinnacle of justice and the law is on his side. Mengan flushed at the smug words and lashed out at the policeman, but the other man took the girl next to him and used her as a human shield. The innocent girl's hair was overgrown with Mengan's poison, which caused a rapid increase in hormones, causing her hair to grow at a rapid rate, causing her to become entangled in her own hair and unable to even move. According to Mengan, King Long was also exposed to this poison, which is why the second had to shave 4 hours a day, so as not to grow completely. Mengan, confident of his victory, ordered all the female slaves to be released now, and immediately after that, Luna attacked him. Mengan was surprised that she wasn't afraid to approach his venomous hand, but as soon as he swung, Luna immediately parried the blow. She told Mengan that she was much stronger than King Long, as well as Juk himself, who was number 2 in Tan Honggan's group. Meanwhile, Elder Zhao was questioning Lin about why he was groping his 2 granddaughters. Lin tried to think of various excuses at the time, but he thought that the best thing to do would be to say that he just liked his legs. Lin believed that honesty was the best policy. After this answer, Lin was awarded points. Then the guy thought that the elder was really angry and tensed up. Zhao asked why Lin did this, which was a strange question for Lin himself, and he didn't know how to answer it. The boy considered various options in his mind as Zhao's patience was running out. Lin decided to say something unconventional and not give himself away as a pervert. So Lin confidently stood up to hide his excitement and began to say that for him, legs were an important way for humanity to move forward. With the help of them, the human race was able to survive, and thanks to women's legs, injured men could rest on them in the days before pillows were invented. Therefore, Lin enthusiastically said that the love of slender legs was embedded in everyone's DNA, since legs were the main reason for human development. Encouraged by Lin's words, Gio gave him a sincere hug, something he didn't expect from the elder. After a moment of silence, Zhao revealed, with tears of joy in his eyes, that he had finally found a like-minded person, that he had the same opinion about legs as the elder himself. The system, after hearing Lin's speech, also cried from the depth of his thoughts. The elder was once again convinced that Lin was the best candidate for his granddaughter's hand in marriage. In the KTV assignment, the fight between Meng Gan and Liuna is still going on. Meng Gan was far inferior in strength and agility to his opponent, but he understood that the airflow created by Liu Fan was not just for a reason. Meng Gan guessed that his opponent's main tactic was to counterattack with his feet, and the fan served as a defense against Meng Gan's own poison attacks. Meng realized that he had no choice, so he decided to release the strongest poisons that were sealed on his left arm. Meng also added that if the seal was removed, everyone within a 10-mile radius might die, including Meng Gan himself, and the poison released would still have a detrimental effect on his body even when Meng Gan was still alive. He was about to unleash all his strength when, to his surprise, he was hit from behind by Lingming. In the mansion, Zhao Lin tries to persuade the elder to give him permission to go to the KTV and help Lingming and Poison Hand, but Zhao, with a carefree smile, said that there was no need, since the Chao family would be easy to handle. Zhao tells how his man, Poison Hand, was a famous martial arts fighter, and that not everyone dared to fight him, and Lingming, thanks to her design talent, possessed powerful devices that helped her in battle. So that Lin wouldn't worry, Zhao decided to call his people and ask about the mission, but no one picked up the phone. Fen suggested that, most likely, instead of Xiao on KTV, the Tan Honggang group is now located along with its head, Xuanwu Zhao, who heard this name was horrified. He said that Xuanwu is the most mysterious character of the Tan Honggang group, and no one even knows what his abilities are or what he looks like, and everyone who revealed his identity was already dead. Lin, having heard the story, decided to take the chance and again volunteer to help Lingming and Meng Gan, to which Zhao, after a little hesitation, agreed, but before leaving, he gave him one thing. Zhao warned that in case of danger, Lin should leave immediately. In the KTV building, dazed from Lingming's punch, Meng Gan noticed that Zhao's granddaughter was being controlled by someone, as her eyes looked very strange. Meng Gan thought it was Liu's ability, but it didn't do anything, and he knew from experience that it was impossible to use abilities with just one power. Meng, in order not to harm the zombified Lingming, decides to attack Madame Liu first with his poison, but is immediately knocked out by Lingming's blow. Lin Fan, meanwhile, was on his way to KTV. The guy was fascinated by the beauty of the limousine he was riding in. Lin knew that when he got there would be an opponent stronger than Juk waiting for him, so he decided to win a new skill in the system lottery. After 2 unsuccessful attempts, he won a new 5-star talent, which he was extremely happy about. Alcohol resistance, 5 stars out of 5. Lin was disappointed to have acquired what he thought was a useless skill. As a sign of injustice, he decides to write on all social networks that his system is the worst in the world, to which she said that the talent is very good, which Lin did not believe. With the new skill unlocked, all first-level items are now available to Lin. Lin wanted to buy something, but he didn't have time because the driver said that they had already arrived. Lin was a little worried as he stood in front of the KTE building. The system asked Lin again if he had changed his mind, because this is a high-difficulty mission, to which the guy replied that he had already made up his mind. Lin thought that even if he was going to certain death, he still needed to become stronger to defeat Shuku. He enters the building and sees a huge number of girls who were standing and waiting for him at the entrance. Lin felt uneasy. For a student who is used to secretly bringing beer to such establishments, visiting such an elite institution as KTV was a great discovery. Lin was completely in awe of what he saw, so he called the madam and asked for 10 people to join him. Elsewhere in the same building, Mangan was beaten unconscious and lost the battle. He was beaten up by a bald policeman who demanded that Mangan use the poison that made his hair grow rapidly. Madame Liu, who was sitting next to her, told the police officer to leave Mangan alone because he was out of breath. Meanwhile, the zombified Liming was doing a pole dance in front of everyone. Madame Liu politely asked the policeman to help deal with the Zhao family, to which he excitedly agrees, saying that in Shenzhou, he is the law himself and the Zhao family will not be able to oppose him. Suddenly, a young girl bursts into the room, saying that a strange client came to the building with a lot of money, and which other girls cannot satisfy in any way. She turns on the security camera, and everyone in the room can see Lin giving each girl a massage while explaining how to do it properly. Lin made comments to the girls who were standing next to him, saying that they didn't have enough professionalism for an elite establishment. Seeing this, Madame Liu and the policeman decide to please the client in order to earn all the millions that he brought with him. So Liu calls Ru Yan over. Suddenly, Lingya is called by one of the girls, and looking at her, he is surprised. A young girl approached Lin and told him that the two of them were brought together by fate. She suggested that Lin close his eyes and guess each other's personalities and interests. Lin obediently agreed and closed his eyes. At that moment, this young girl decided to take the chance and give a massage to the guy in order to get approval from him. However, Lin guessed that this girl was Fen Xiaoman's daughter and stopped her. While the guy held her hands, she used the same acupuncture technique, which caused Lin to be shocked, because such an art is only developed during 10 years of hard training, and pushed the girl away from him. Fen Xiaoman's daughter was amazed that someone could resist her acupuncture technique. The system reminded him that for opening the first mission, Lin can improve one of the skills, so Lin decided to improve the talent of massage. Massage skill, 2 stars out of 5. Daughter Fen realized that her opponent is not a miss, so she decides to use her secret technique, the multi-armed bodhisattva. Lin quickly ran up to Fen's daughter, which she did not expect, and pressed on all her points of the body, from which she felt incredible pleasure. The weak girl was barely able to stand up, so Lin told her to go with him. The girl said that Lin would have to win her in one game first, and only when he won would she go with him. 6 bottles of 38-year-old whiskey worth 83,000 yuan were placed on the table. Lin paid for all the drinks with money, which was actually ordinary bills disguised as bills. The girl said that if Lin got too drunk, she would go with him. They started playing dice, where if the opponent does not guess the number, then he drinks 1 glass of whiskey. Daughter Fen was confident in her victory, and the first round was up to her. But during the game, the guy still retained his sanity. Daughter Fen was shocked, as Lin had already had 10 drinks in a row, but he was still thinking normally. Then she asked the bartender to bring a drink with 70 revolutions. Everyone was very surprised that the alcohol, even after a few bottles, still didn't affect Lin. Still not giving up, the girl asked the bartender to bring the strongest that they have in the bar. Madame Liu and the policeman were impressed with Lin and his alcohol resistance. A drink with 96 degrees was brought to the table. It was selected polished vodka. Daughter Fen was already looking forward to her victory, since after the alcohol was brought, no one could stand on their feet before, because his alcohol concentration in that vodka was higher than in medical alcohol. Lin realized that his newfound ability was very useful, but he didn't need to delay, as the magnet card's ability would soon run out and all the money would turn into ordinary pieces of paper. The guy was wondering how he could see the dice through the glass to finally guess the number and beat the girl. Lin then uses the massage skill on himself, which increases his vision skill. Now, thanks to his improved vision, Lin could see the dice through the glass. It turns out that the daughter of Fen all this time used a magnet to control the bones, because of which she never lost. However, due to Lin's good eyesight, he could now see people through their clothes, which caused him to be shell-shocked at first. Lin knew that this way he might lose consciousness from overexcitation, so he quickly decides to roll the dice himself. Lin guessed the number, and the round was up to him. Fen had drunk 96% of the alcohol and was barely conscious. Lin won the subsequent rounds again, causing the girl to drink too much alcohol and pass out. After his victory, Lin takes the girl with him. Suddenly, the magnet card spell ended, and the money turned into ordinary pieces of paper, which is why Lin had to quickly run away from the building, as a fraudster was noticed in it. Madame Liu, seeing Lin running away, stopped him and threw him to the ground. She began to ask him where he was from and who he worked for, but soon, before he could say anything, he passed out from overexcitation. Lin woke up to find Venomous Hand, who was still unconscious, and Liming, who was still brainwashed. Lin noticed that he was tied up, and Madame Liu was standing in front of him. The system warned Lin to be careful, as it noticed that his companions' heartbeats were weakened. The system was also at a loss, and told the guy that it couldn't recognize the lady's heartbeat, even with her advanced technological device. After that, Lin shouted out and asked the woman if she was the same Tuan Wu, to which the girl looked at him in disbelief. A bald policeman approaches Lin, saying that he is the same Tuan Wu that the main character was talking about. Lin, who was in complete disbelief, asked the man why he committed atrocities when he was a police officer himself. He just said that this is how human society works and started beating Lin up. The policeman continued, saying that the soldier named Lin Chine-kun was much worse than him, as he had left his son and wife to fend for themselves. Hearing this, Lin became really angry. The policeman said that no one would hear Lin now, but Lin himself wasn't so sure. The bald man said that now he would beat the guy to death, and then put everything down to an accident. The policeman boasted that he had taken the boxing championship belt for 3 years in a row, and after these words he began to beat the main character with his signature techniques. Lin himself didn't feel anything. These punches were too weak for him, and in the blink of an eye, he untangles himself and hits the policeman, which the other did not expect. The policeman was sent flying several meters forward and was severely injured when Madame Liu was surprised that the guy was able to escape from the trap. As Lin approached the injured man, the latter cursed the protagonist, saying that his family was already dead. Lin approached the policeman and said that he had overdid it a little and put the man's broken arm back, which caused the second man to feel a hell of a pain, and then passed out. Madame Liu stopped Lin and warned him that the more severely Lin injured a policeman, the longer the sentence would be, since there was no evidence that the policeman was guilty. Suddenly, Lin and Madame Liu hear the voice of the policeman himself recorded on Ling Ming's glove. Ling Ming, who had already gotten out of someone else's control, said that they now had proof. Ling Ming had discovered Madame Liu's special ability to control her victims thanks to the neurotoxins that were embedded in her fan. However, Ling Ming was able to awaken as she hit the poison hand, and the effect immediately disappeared. Therefore, Ling Ming's subsequent attacks were casual, so as not to harm the poison hand and expose herself. Lin was delighted with the genius of Zheo's granddaughter. At the same time, the police officer woke up, who was beside himself with anger, so he decided to take a pill that made him stronger and taller. Lin and the policeman were about to start fighting when a fan suddenly flew into the other's head, causing him to pass out. Lin and Ling Ming were surprised by the madam's actions. Ling Ming asked Madame Liu why she decided to knock out her ally, to which Madame Liu only smiled maliciously. Madame Liu revealed that she had never been in league with this police officer, and she also gave Ling Ming all the evidence of KTV's illegal actions, which made Ling Ming herself confused. Instead, Liu only asked Lin and Ling Ming to take care of the girls here. And then finally, she also asked them to send greetings to the system Barlala. The system and Lin were surprised by these words, while Lingming was angry because she didn't understand what Madame Liu was saying. As a result, Madame Liu once again said goodbye to the heroes and simply disappeared. For the heroes, there was only one unresolved issue, a policeman who was lying in a blackout. Lin was in deep thought, as he didn't know how best to spend his accumulated points, nor did the piercing arrow item that Elder Zhao had given him, which Lin didn't understand the purpose of. Night Shenzhou. Suddenly, a salute flashes in the sky. Several men in formal suits recognized the salute as the piercing arrow of Elder Zhao, and quickly got into their cars to drive to the source of the salute's launch. At that time, a report on illegal activities of KTV was received at the police station, as a result of which all police officers left for detention. Police officers and people in suits arrived and saw a strange silhouette of a man on the roof. It was the bald cop who had been dressed up in an extravagant suit and given a pole. It was controlled by Lin and his big sister ability, which forced the victim to do whatever the caster wanted. In front of the moonlight, a bald policeman began pole dancing, making everyone in the audience feel sick. Meanwhile, Lin was getting a lot of points. Ze, who was sitting in front of him, was praising Lin for the work he had done, which was why he was able to undermine the forces of the enemy Xiao family, as well as Chine Honggang's group. Poison Hand, according to the Elder, was still in a coma, but thanks to Lingming and her medical bag, his condition had stabilized. After that, the Elder asked the question that had long tormented Xiaolin about why he brought all the girls from KTV to his house, to which the guy replied that he did it out of good intentions to help the poor ladies. Fen, who was sitting in the same room with them, was grateful to Lin for saving her daughter, who was still sleeping. Zhao said that because of the Xiao family, the Zhao family is now in big financial problems, and the opportunity to employ all the girls from KTV will not work. The system gave a new task to Lin. Save all the girls from drug addiction in 2 hours. Help them find a new field of activity before tomorrow. The deadline is 9 a.m. Lin knew that he had 2 hours to do everything and needed to hurry. Suddenly, Uncle Lai Shu, who was recently found by Zhao's people, walks into the room. Lin was thrilled to be reunited with his uncle. In the police station, the girl is preparing for a battle with the killer of her boss, to whom she owes her life. The killer dropped the flyer, which is why the woman suggested that KTV and the Chine Hong group could be closely connected. The girl's name was Wu Tenlin, and she was the deputy chief of the Rapid Reaction Force. The girl was determined to deal with all the dangerous groups and avenge her now-deceased boss. Wu Tenlin was informed that Yeshin KTV had just been shut down, which she didn't expect. Lin, Uncle Lai, and Zhao were sitting at the table. Lai Shu was extremely grateful for Elder Zhao's help. He knew that it was all his fault, since he owed the Xiao family a debt that he couldn't repay. However, Zhao said that the only person to thank was Lin, who saved everyone. Lin asked his uncle why he was wearing a mask, and the uncle took off the mask and showed his huge lips. To Lin's further questions, Uncle Lai only told the story. He said that when Lin left, he decided to sell the plates of dumplings that Lin just left in the kitchen. However, after hearing a strange sound from the hall, Lai Shu went to check what had happened, and saw his customer, who was scalded from a hot dish, pointing at the dumplings sold. Uncle Lai decided to try one of the dumplings, which made him ecstatic, as the dumplings were divinely delicious. But because of the special properties of this dish, which could not be cooled down, Uncle Lai and the client decided to eat these dumplings, even if they were very scalding, which caused both of them to be hospitalized due to multiple burns to their mouths. Uncle Lai decided to ask about how Lin was able to make such delicious dumplings, to which Lin only lied, saying that this secret recipe was taught to him by his father. Uncle Lai, not remembering this, asked Lin if he had ever given anyone else these dangerous dishes, which made him remember giving 2 plates to the limo driver. Lin, remembering this, abruptly ran outside, but it was too late. The limo driver got burned by these delicious dishes. However, there was 1 plate in front of him, when the other, as the injured limo driver later added, he gave to a little girl on the floor above. Everyone realized that Sinoin was in danger, and Lin, along with the others, ran to her room. Meanwhile, the police surrounded Captain Chen, the bald cop that Lin had previously controlled. Wu Tenlin came to the same place. Chen was furious at being tricked and shamed in front of everyone, keeping everyone at a distance and not letting anyone approach him. However, Captain Wu Tenlin quickly ran up to the corrupt policeman and shot him with a revolver. All of the henchmen, including Chen himself, fainted as she deliberately fired rubber bullets. The police officer doubted that Chen could be Tuan Wu, as he was too weak. Wu Tenlin was told that a student from the Zhao family dealt with the entire KTV. After these words, she was determined and decided to find that student. Meanwhile, in Xiaoyan's room, Lin was still getting his glasses, which was why he didn't know. Xiaoyan, who finished her portion of the scalding dumplings, said that it was delicious, and when asked about her health, she replied that she was fine. Lin asked Balal, as he now called the system, what kind of dumplings they were, to which she replied that this dish was cooked on a true fire of 3 flavors of dumplings, and that such dishes could not be tasted by mere mortals. However, the system, like Lin, didn't know why Xiaoyan didn't burn her mouth while eating such food. Uncle Lei asked Lin to teach him how to cook these dumplings, while removing the burning effect, which would greatly improve the dish. Lin refused, saying that he couldn't reveal the secret recipes of his ancestors. Uncle Lei was very upset by this answer. Lin remembered that he only had 2 hours until the end of the mission. Then he decides to help uncover the secret of those divine dumplings and help Uncle Lai recruit countless customers so that his dumpling shop grows into a huge chain of restaurants where he can arrange the KTV girls that he needed to complete the quest and get rewards. Wounded KTV member Nightly Fun informs the chairman that the Zhao family covered for them, and even their patron Swan Wu failed to help them and was captured by the police. He explains that he wanted to stop them from taking the girls, but in the end, they just beat him up. The chairman was extremely angry at this news, but his son calmed him down. It was Xiao Kong, the 3rd heir of the Xiao family. He helped the injured man up and thanked him for his contribution to the Xiao family's cause by rubbing his palm. Such an unexpected gesture confused the man, and he warned the heir that he might get his face dirty, but it soon turned out that this was what Xiao Kong wanted. Leaving blood on his face, the young man broke both of his arms and beat him severely. After breaking all 10 of the sufferer's fingers and crushing his jaw, Xiao Kong called the police, accusing the half-dead KTV member of beating and harassment. Watching this scene, my father was in shock. He didn't understand why Kong called the police himself, but Kong explained that he was going to end the criminal KTV business, and that starting from his generation, the Xiao family would only do honest and legitimate business. With the help of secret technology stolen from the Zhao family, the guy intends to call a press conference and seize the championship in this race. Meanwhile, Lin Fan was looking for a way to cool the dumplings made by the system. A new ability, technogeny, has been unlocked for him. This pleased him so much that he began to imagine himself in the shoes of Steve Jobs, Jack Ma, and other famous personalities, and already saw himself becoming the president of his company, whose shares would be traded on the market. But at the same time, he was afraid of becoming indifferent to worldly affairs, not coping with rapid success. Putting aside his fantasies, Lin Fan went to create a device for cooling dumplings. He even asked Uncle Lai and Elder Zhao to wait outside for him so that they wouldn't distract him from his work. Even his little sister was forbidden to go inside. Finally, he completed his creation. It turned out to be a wind generator that was directly connected to a conventional fan, which allowed it to reach a speed of 3,000 revolutions per minute. However, when he tried to cool a plate of dumplings, he immediately became disillusioned with his invention. Lin Fan turned to the system in dissatisfaction, complaining about the uselessness of the ability. She tried to justify herself, because after all, he was able to build a whole wind generator in just 10 minutes, but this answer did not satisfy the young man. Deciding not to rely on skills anymore, he remembered how his little sister ate a portion of dumplings without any problems, and then he had an interesting theory. After asking the elder to call all the girls inside, he greeted them cordially. Everyone was perplexed, and one even began to be rude to the owners of the store, accusing them of cheating. With obvious sarcasm, she asked Lin Fan that since she was out of a job, would he provide for her? Surprisingly, he answered positively to this question without a drop of irony. Taking this as a bluff, the girl continued to taunt the young man. He offered her to eat dumplings, after which she was immediately refused, but the dish interested other girls who gladly agreed to try it. After tasting it, they were shocked by the amazing taste of dumplings, and, surprisingly, none of them got burned. Lin Fan's theory was confirmed. Dumplings cooked on a true fire have a huge hot yang energy, while the girl's breath has a cool yin energy. When these two energies come into contact, neutralization occurs and the temperature decreases significantly. After this discovery, the guy again turns to the rude girl with an offer to provide for them. She didn't know what to say. Meanwhile, the police were listening outside the building. Considering the girls' cheers as something illegal, they were surprised that the Zhao family, who had only been doing legitimate business all their lives, could do such terrible things. One of the police officers managed to make inquiries and find information about Lin Fan. They were disgusted that such a young guy was already engaged in illegal business. Gathering their wits, they were ready to storm the building. All the girls changed into their maid uniforms, which the elder had very successfully saved. Everyone except Ru Yan. She scoffed at Lin Fan's idea, considering the dumplings with the maids to be terribly tasteless. Meanwhile, Uncle Lai, who still didn't understand the idea, asked me to explain what the idea was. Lin Fan explained to him that since no cooling devices help the dumplings cool down, they need the help of girls who will cool them with their breath. So they were hired as dumpling workers, so he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Solved the problem with scalding dumplings and helped the destitute girls. However, Lai was embarrassed by the hygiene part of the plan, thinking that it might harm their reputation, but Lin Fan and the elder quickly dismissed this argument and finally opened their own restaurant. Meanwhile, 2 students were passing by, discussing the beating up of William's teacher. One of them suspected Lin Fan of this, but the other only sneered at him, promising to eat a whole ton of feces on a live broadcast if it turned out to be true. Quickly changing the subject, the first young man offered his friend a breakfast of dumplings. He initially wanted to refuse, but the sight of the beautiful maids left him no chance, captivating his gaze. Uncle Lai met the guys right at the entrance, telling them that the beautiful girls inside are required to blow on the dumplings because the dish is too hot, but if they are against it, then the dumplings can be replaced with ordinary ones. Before Lai could finish, the young men asked her to leave everything as it was and ordered 2 servings of dumplings. After sitting down at the table, they were immediately greeted by 2 beautiful maidservants. The boys were quite confused by their appearance. Blowing on the dumplings, the girls gave the guys a taste of them. They compared their excellent taste and balance of ingredients with the architecture of Antoni Gaudi and the Symphony Spring. This taste was so great that they ordered extra portions after the first dumpling. After 10 minutes, the entire dumpling shop was packed with customers. During this time, visitors managed to buy all 30 servings of dumplings, which was previously possible only for the whole morning. While Lin Fan and the elder were enjoying their success, Ru Yan couldn't believe the profitability of this business. After ordering more plates, Lai left Lin Fan to his own devices. Over time, the price of dumplings increased from 6 to 20 yuan, and then even to hundreds, but even such an increase in prices did not stop the influx of people. Such an incredible success, according to Lin Fan's calculations, taking into account all the costs, will bring in 2 million yuan a year. He turned to Balala, thinking that his mission was over, but he needed to find work for all the girls, including Ru Yan. There were only 10 minutes left until the end of the mission, and he didn't even know how he would manage to meet this deadline. At this time, police officers watched the dumplings from the side, not understanding how so many people came to them in 10 minutes. Before they personally broke into the building, they decided to launch a quadcopter to find out the situation. However, due to a bad signal, they misunderstood the essence of the dumpling shop, thinking that it sells maids for 100 yuan a night, providing services not only for adult women, but also for little girls. The police were furious. The police break into the dumpling shop. As soon as they got inside, they laid Lin Fan on the floor, and only then did they pay attention to the surroundings. The customers who had been calmly eating dumplings with the maids looked at them in amazement. 2 male police officers turned to the captain, saying that they were just a little wrong. After temporarily closing the establishment, they calmly discussed the incident. The captain's wife lied that breaking into the establishment with a bazooka to check the sanitary standards is a requirement of the charter, and ordered Lin Fan to go with her to the station to give evidence in the KTV case Nightly Fun. And also, despite the fact that the guy helped disadvantaged girls, they still need to conduct a check on this issue. While the captain was negotiating with Lin Fan, the 2 junior policemen were already eating dumplings, which she clearly didn't like. Meanwhile, all the dumpling shop workers were discussing this situation in the kitchen. The maids were very worried about the fate of this place, because in one morning they earned more than in the whole night in KTV. After accidentally overhearing the conversation, Ru Yan also decided to earn some money by going out with a plate of dumplings in the hall. The girls immediately understood what would happen next and explained to the elder that Ru Yan was able to attract not only men, but also women. Approaching the captain, the girl told her a touching story about her paralyzed mother and offered her dumplings. Unable to resist, the policeman still tasted the dumplings and from the first bite was captured by this delicious taste. She started to eat the dish nonstop, but then Ru Yan lied to the captain again, saying that she had crumbs on her face. The maid came so close to her that they could feel each other's breath. The policewoman couldn't resist Ru Yan's incredible charm. The first mission was completed. Taking advantage of the moment, Lin Fan ran out of the dumpling shop and ran towards the fumes. Sitting in his pants at an English lesson, the guy decided to take stock. The system informed him that while he was participating in the lottery, he had unlocked 3 whole new abilities. Nerd's Rote Learning, 5 stars, Slam Dunk Master, 1 star, and Supernatural Abilities, 1 star. The system also displayed the entire list of abilities that Lin Fan currently had. In addition to the above, there were Master of Massage, 2 stars, Master of Boxing, 5 stars, Master of Literball, 5 stars, and Technogeny, 1 star. Also, due to the fact that the young man helped the entire group of girls, and not just Ru Yan, he was entitled to an additional reward. He could either upgrade the primary ability by 1 star, or upgrade the secondary ability to 5 stars. In addition, he has unlocked the second level of the ability market, and the abilities of the level 1 market will now be available in unlimited quantities, and will never increase in price again. The price of level 2 abilities will increase with each use, until it reaches level 3, and so on. Finally, the system congratulated Lin Fan on reaching the 10,000 point milestone. To celebrate, the guy easily hit the desk, but unexpectedly for everyone, including himself, a huge crack appeared on the table. The system explained this by saying that Lin Fan had discovered a supernatural power ability and wasn't used to it yet. The teacher, noticing Lin Fan's behavior, yelled at him and demanded that he repeat what he had just said. At that moment, the young man discovered another ability in himself. Although he was delving into the lesson, in his mind he saw it so clearly and in detail, as if it were a record. Lin Fan had no problem telling the teacher exactly what the teacher had said during the entire lesson. The entire audience, as well as the teacher himself, were shocked and could not believe their eyes. Lin Fan, meanwhile, found that he could read 1,000 lines at once with just 1 glance. At the same time, Xiao Mimi and Xiao Chao were walking down the corridor. Xiao asked why Mimi hadn't said anything since yesterday. He quickly guessed that she had fallen in love with Lin Fan and started to prove that he was worthless. To prove it, he took her to an English class, hoping to see a bewildered Lin Fan, but instead, when they arrived at the classroom, they saw Lin Fan teaching the teacher and other students English. At this moment, Mimi saw him not just as an ordinary student, but as a true gentleman. The entire audience was shocked by Lin Fan's skills. Moreover, when he mentioned that he had learned half of the Oxford Dictionary, the teacher personally invited the guide to take all sorts of exams and agreed to pay for each of them. All this Lin Fan managed to achieve thanks to the ability of Rote Learning Nerd. With it, his memory became the best of all living beings in the universe, with the exception, of course, of the system. He was about to become an expert on everything from ancient to modern, but Mimi stopped him, dragging her brother with her. She lied to Lin Fan that Cheo had fallen unconscious and needed to be replaced for the international final match. At first, the young man was against it, but when he realized that this was a good way to earn a lot of points, he immediately agreed. Contrary to his expectations, the match was a volleyball match that he didn't know how to play at all. In their team, besides the main character and Mimi, there was also Siki, Lin Fan's ex-girlfriend, who was unhappy with this replacement, but due to Cheo's absence, she had to accept it. They came face to face with their opponents. They were muscular American girls. Mimi was determined to win the cup, to which Brittany, the main striker of the American national team, ridiculed her, claiming that in volleyball only height and build matter. Commentators announced the start of the championship final and also introduced Cheo's replacement. His classmates did not believe in his victory because Lin Fan had never played volleyball. Meanwhile, Mimi was thinking about him in her head. She wanted to know what else he excelled at besides studying and wushu. The audience also discussed the chances of winning this or that team. The American team had been champions for 3 years in a row, and they also had a trump card up their sleeve that had never been taken out before. The match has started, and the American team immediately scores the first goal. Siki, the strongest receiver in the Chinese team, was unable to take the ball of Jones, whose serves are considered the most powerful and are nicknamed Nightmare. Lin Fan ran to Siki, worried that she was hurt, and left his seat, which Mimi immediately responded to. Taking advantage of the confusion, the Americans launched their attack, however, unexpectedly for everyone. Lin Fan catches the ball. Not knowing the rules of volleyball, he didn't know that he needed to hit it. The stands were bursting with laughter, and the audience finally lost faith in the Chinese team. Meanwhile, the American team was not amused. Lin Fan was the first person in a long time to take Jones' serve. Mimi explained the rules of volleyball to the guy, and Jones prepared to put all her strength into the next serve. The next round began, and the Chinese team changed positions. Lin Fan moved to the back line, and Siki became the link. Despite the incredible strength he put into the serve, Lin Fan had no trouble fending it off. Jones was in shock. The Chinese team launched a counterattack, and Mimi was about to use her signature karate kick. Mimi used karate kick, but alas, it didn't produce any results. Brittany easily closed the shot due to the too obvious difference in physical fitness. Brittany scoffed at Mimi's signature punch, while the Chinese team didn't know what to do. However, Lin Fan had a plan in mind. If you jump high enough with enough strength, you will win. Everything seems simple, but as soon as the round starts, the guy hits the ball too hard, which is why the enemy team gets a point. Brittany decided to use her signature punch, American Angel Punch. Mimi ordered Siki to cover the net, but Lin Fan took the initiative. The guy easily bypassed Brittany in height, but he hit the net and fell directly on the American girl. The audience is shocked. The stands are once again bursting with laughter, and the Chinese team gets a yellow card. Brittany was ready to tear up a puking Lin Fan on the spot for such audacity, but Jones stopped her. The American team needed a timeout to calm down their captain. The audience continued to laugh at Lin Fan, but one of them captured his incredible jump on the camera. The young man jumped at least 2.2 meters up, and perhaps they witnessed a new star of volleyball. Lin Fan himself, on the other hand, couldn't move away from the terrible contact with his opponent and couldn't hold back the urge to vomit. At this time, Mimi couldn't stop admiring him. In her eyes, he looked like a muscular volleyball master. When Lin Fan's stomach calmed down, he became interested in the rules of the match he was participating in. Embarrassing himself, of course, can also earn a lot of points, but in this case, he can forget about normal life. He asked for Mimi's phone number to Google the volleyball rules. She dutifully gave him the phone, but to her surprise, he returned it very quickly. She assumed that Lin Fan often played basketball, but his skills in scoring and receiving the ball were too different from that sport. The Chinese team decided to change tactics. Lin Fan should redirect the ball to Mimi, and she will score. The ball was taken over by Sitsi. Even though she hated Lin Fan, she hated the American team even more. so she couldn't afford to miss a single goal. The break is over, the game has started. Siki barely managed to deflect Jones' serve, and the ball flew straight at Lin Fan. Mimi gave the order to serve, but the guy overreached with the force of the blow and hit the ball right in the face of Mimi. Siki scolded the careless young man, while Mimi herself speculated that the ball might have been an inconspicuous catch. For the rest of the match, the Chinese team could not oppose anything to the Americans and lost the first half in a dry game with a score of 25-0. The Chinese team was desperate and didn't know what to do. In the end, Lin Fan turned to Balala. She explained to him that 1 star of Master of Slam Dunk can be compared to 1 manga about the Sakura military team from the human world. Its level is similar to their initial level. At this time, the American team taunted the Chinese team, claiming that they would also win the next half dry. Enraged, Lin Fan had no choice but to add extra ability points to the Slam Dunk Master. He agreed with Mimi that he would be a striker in the next game and was going to conduct a counterattack. The second half has started, and now the ball is served by the Chinese team. Their classmates, despite the crushing defeat in the last half, believe in the victory of their own and sincerely support them, but Jones calmly hits the ball into the unprotected place of the opposite team. Running up to the ball, Brittany uses her signature moon power kick, but Lin Fan crosses the field in one sharp jump and hits the ball with his face. The Americans do not have time to react to the bouncing ball, and China gets its first point in this match. The stands are cheering, people are stunned by his speed and are amazed at such ingenuity. Mimi and Siki are worried about their friend's health, but he assures them that everything is fine. The American team is also in shock, and the next shot is given to Anna, the defender of the American team. She uses the swirl kick technique, kicking the ball away, but Siki also does not stand aside and calmly hits the ball directly to Mimi, but suddenly the ball spins in the air and flies out of the girl's hands. There was no one at the place where the sword fell, and Brittany was already confident that they would win, when suddenly Lin Fan is right at the sword and uses the newly invented "fuck you to your grandfather" kick, hitting the ball on the opponent's field and earning another point for China. The blow was so strong that it tore Brittany's pigtail. The Chinese team couldn't contain their joy. The score was 2-0 in their favor. Meanwhile, while Brittany was grieving over her pigtail, Anna and Jones couldn't believe that someone had managed to fend off a whirlwind punch. While the Americans were puzzled, Mimi praised her teammate and promised to give him all the balls. After collecting their thoughts, they decided that they would not give the Americans a chance. Siki watched from the sidelines, but alas, everyone seemed to have forgotten about her. No matter what the American team tried to do, they couldn't fight off Lin Fan's attack. Even the 3 of them couldn't just stop the ball. What can we say about trying to hit it? Nothing could stop the guy, and soon the score again reached 25-0, but in favor of China. The second half ended with the victory of Lin Fan's team. Their joy was boundless. The match was watched through surveillance cameras by American rich people, wondering how China managed to win. They bet a large sum on America's victory, believing that they were guaranteed to win. The white and red masked man ordered his subordinates to find out as much information as possible about Lin Fan, as well as capture him as soon as the match was over. The masked man thought the name was familiar. Also at this time, Zhuk was lost in the stands, mysteriously watching the match. Commentators announced the current score of the match. The teams are on a par with the score 1-1. The decisive half begins. Lin Fan's abilities have so impressed some viewers that they can't even close their mouths in amazement, and the reporters who were at the match are preparing to interview the rising star right after the game. Lin Fan's classmates overheard this and immediately rushed to the reporters' side, hoping to grab even the slightest bit of fame. Meanwhile, the American team was terrified. They had no idea how they would manage to defeat such a strong opponent until their secret trump card came out on the field. His name was Charles. The commentator enthusiastically announced his appearance on the field, unable to contain his emotions. Charles immediately fell in love with Siki, and Mimi noticed that he was at least 2 meters tall. While preparing for the start of halftime, Charles promised Lin Fan that he wouldn't get a single point from now on. With a threatening look, he set a condition. Lin Fan attacks. He accepts. If Lin Fan scored even 1 point, then the game would be up to him. The boy had absolutely no idea what Charles was talking about, but Charles didn't waste any time on empty explanations and headed back to his team. Halftime begins. Jones uses a giant whale serve. Siki takes the ball and passes it to Lin Fan, who uses a fuck you to your grandfather kick. It looked like he was about to score, but then something strange happens. The ball abruptly changes its trajectory, flying straight into Charles' hand. Lin Fan watches in shock as his opponent easily deflects the kick, passing the ball to Brittany, who scores the points. Even the commentators didn't understand what just happened on the pitch. Team China were also confused. As it turned out, Charles has a rare supernatural body that literally attracts the ball to itself. He calls his ability the Super Acceptance Realm. Lin Fan again tries to break through Charles' defense, but the ball's trajectory changes again, and the American passes the ball to Brittany, who is going to use a moon kick. Lin Fan tried to defend the field, but his body was literally dumbfounded. Mimi tried to hit the ball, but it was no use. The Americans scored another point. Lin Fan, whose body still couldn't move, guessed that it was because of Zhu's toist magic. His appearance confused the kid, because 10 days have not yet passed, but soon he comes to understand that he is at one with the American team. Mimi, meanwhile, is severely injured by Brittany's signature punch, but Lin Fan volunteers to help her. He takes off her sneaker and gives her a wellness massage to relax her muscles. Unexpectedly, Mimi remembers her childhood. My father slapped Mimi on the knee for scratching her brother. The head of the family despised his daughter, blaming the mother for giving birth to her and not the second son. After cursing Mimi once more, he went to the bedroom to mend the third child. It was then that the girl understood the role of women in the family. Born into the family of a large entrepreneur, where the family business is passed on to her son, she could only endure humiliation and watch as all the attention goes to her brother. Once Mimi moved out of the house, she would have absolutely nothing. Therefore, she can only do one thing, to try to become more successful than her brothers. She decided that she would no longer cry and wait for compassion from people, no matter how hard it was. She has trained hard to become what she is now. When she returned from the dream world to the real world, she didn't know why she remembered all this. By then, Lin Fan had finished the wellness massage and reassured her that as long as he was around, they would definitely win. Unable to contain her emotions, Mimi burst into tears. Lin Fan noticed Mimi's tears and asked if everything was all right. She was delighted with the guy's wonderful massage, and they were about to go on the counterattack. But Siki also wanted to try Lin Fan's massage. She turned to him with pain in her hands, but he only verbally supported her. Siki was embarrassed and felt bad, but she didn't have time to think about it. The giant whale's feed was already approaching her. The girl took the ball, but she is completely exhausted and is unlikely to survive another serve. If the Chinese team fails to win the right to serve, then we can assume that everything is over. Lin Fan runs to the ball. Charles, still confident in his abilities, prepares to hit it. Mimi is worried about this kick, but Lin Fan asked her to trust him and pass the ball. If Charles is the strongest receiver, then Lin Fan is the strongest attacker. This confrontation will be incredible. Classmates of the guy, as well as reporters, are rooting for his success with all their might. Mimi uses the Flying Hermit's wushu ball, and the ball goes straight to Lin Fan. Zhu has no doubt that Charles will take this shot, but the safety net has never been superfluous. He uses the magic of manipulating people on Lin Fan, and he freezes in place. But using Master Slam Dunk's 5-star ability and supernatural powers, he breaks Zhu's shackles. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Before the kick, Lin Fan invests the last ability point in supernatural powers and jumps up to the ball. The Americans use the American double closure, but Lin Fan punches it through and through. Mimi is delighted with his companion. Charles, unaware of what awaits him, prepares to hit the ball. The ball spun around him and was already flying into his hands when it suddenly flew straight into his face. Both teams, as well as Zhu, were shocked by Lin Fan's superhuman strength. Charles was defeated. The crowd cheered along with the Chinese team, but then Charles got to his feet. He recognized Lin Fan as an equal opponent, to which the kid noticed that the American had blood all over his face, but the American replied that it only awakens the beast in him. Unfortunately, he couldn't show it in practice. Each time, he caught more punches in the face. He even begged Lin Fan to stop, but it was pointless. Meanwhile, Zhu kept trying to stop Lin Fan, but he couldn't do anything. The guy continued to hit balls in the face of Charles, who had already completely lost all strength and stopped resisting, and his team began to use him as a human shield, imagining it as a bombing during the war. Finally, Lin Fan uses a "how's your grandpa doing there" kick, which is so powerful that Charles is thrown several meters away, and the ball itself flies far beyond the building. The crowd cheers and Mimi is thrilled, but Zhuke doesn't like Lin Fan's rapid growth in strength, so he decides not to wait 10 days and get down to business as soon as possible. The Chinese team won the cup in this match. Right after his graduation, Lin Fan's classmates started walking towards him. They couldn't believe his success, but they were all happy about his victory. But they were all interrupted by Mimi, who ran into the guy with open arms. She invited Lin Fan to her house for dinner, which made the others puzzled. Despite Lin Fan's incredible talents, they couldn't believe that the second beauty of the school had invited him to her place, and they thought that they were crazy. Their conversations were interrupted by Mimi, who ordered them to be quiet. Lin Fan wasn't interested in all this. He was only happy about one thing: the huge amount of points he received. The fact that Mimi and Lin Fan were acting like a couple didn't sit well with Siki. She was afraid that they would become part of the same family. Intending to separate the two, she headed towards them, but she was crushed by a crowd of reporters who were already rushing to interview Lin Fan. They began to bombard him with questions about defeating Charles, to which the kid didn't know what to say. Mimi prompted him to tell them some nonsense, and the first thing he did was ask who Charles was. That's what happens when you don't introduce yourself to your opponents in time. There were more and more points. After asking one of the reporters, he found out that it was now being broadcast all over the world. Lin Fan's requests to talk about his training were rejected by the reporters, which they could not have expected. Already another reporter, deciding that the guy had no experience at all, also began to annoy him with questions about what his plans for the future were and whether he planned to join a professional volleyball team. Lin Fan replied that it was his first time playing this sport, but he found it interesting, so he plans to continue training and is going to become a champion. This response surprised the reporters even more. In the end, he was asked if he wanted to pass something on to the audience or thank someone. Taking the opportunity, he advertised his dumplings, claiming that thanks to the food from there, he became so strong. There were more and more points, but his simple advertisement was quickly revealed. The reporters didn't like it, but under pressure from Mimi, they decided not to push their luck and let it go. Lin Fan's English teacher broke through the crowd of reporters and directed him and Mimi to the principal's office. He congratulated them on winning the championship, noting that they glorified their university. However, he noticed that there were only 2 of them, even though there were 3 people in the team. The English teacher explained to the rector that he could not find Sitsi, so he brought only them. The rector was satisfied with this answer and got down to business. The English teacher told him about Lin Fan's incredible abilities, and he believes that the guy can enter the military department. This news stunned the kid, but Mimi was very happy because they could become classmates and see each other every day. Lin Fan thought about this proposal and decided that it made sense, because once he got to the military enlistment office, he would be able to take high military positions and use them to find out the reasons for his father's disappearance. As he continued to speak, the principal explained to Lin Fan that he needed to take the annual exam, which would be held just next week. However, he also wants to hear the teacher's opinion on his admission. Lai Lei, the English teacher, was all hands-on, because Lin Fan's English skills could compete not only with the students of the military department, but also with any citizen of their country. Tlai Ei, the head of the Department of Veterinary Medicine, also didn't mind. It would seem that access to the exam is already in Lin Fan's pocket, but here Hai Muir, the deputy head of the military department, was against it. After making inquiries, she noticed that the guy's grades, including English, were always average and did not stand out in any way, and she did not understand how he managed to become a genius in his senior year. She decided that Lin Fan's title of proficient in half the Oxford Dictionary was just a show-off, and the other teacher's grades were wrong. The boy objected, claiming that his father had taught him a realistic approach to learning from childhood. He also had the audacity to ask her who she was. The English teacher tried to calm Lin Fan down, because this is the deputy head of the military department herself, and her position corresponds to the level of the rector. Muir continued to push the kid. His file says that his father abandoned the family when Lin Fan was still in middle school, and could not teach the boy anything but disrespect for his elders. This angered Lin Fan, and he said that he wasn't going to respect Muir, because she didn't give him any reason to do so. The woman responded to such audacity with a ban on joining the military faculty, but this did not upset our hero at all. He claimed that he did not need this faculty and would live quietly without it. Muir took it as an empty show-off, because he already knows that he will not pass the exam. After all, whatever his level of English, only a well-developed elite is accepted for military service. But then Mimi intervened in the conversation, reminding Muir that 4 people voted for Lin Fan's admission to the exam, and only 1 voted against. After giving in to pressure, she still agreed to participate in the exam, believing that he would not pass anyway. After the verdict was announced, she immediately disappeared from sight. The headmaster noticed that Lin Fan was very much in trouble. While everyone is in the rector's office, somewhere nearby in the rain, Brittany is grieving for the defeat and loss of the title of champion, but she is found by one of Lin Fan's classmates. Then we are immediately shown Lin Fan walking down the street with Mimi. 2 of Lin Fan's classmates are watching this scene to see if they are dating or not. The guy himself is very confused and does not understand why Mimi follows him everywhere, and reflects that despite her perseverance, she is only the 2nd most beautiful in their university. They walked in complete silence until Mimi interrupted her. The girl apologized to the guy for dragging him into trouble, and he would have to confront Black Apple, their deputy dean. This conversation was overheard by Lin Fan's classmates, and not hearing some of the words, they decided that they were really dating, and one of the guys even began to cry. Lin Fan also heard this, but Mimi quickly diverted his attention by reminding him of the invitation to her house. The guy wasn't particularly eager to go to the Xiao family's house. After all, he had recently destroyed their underground fights in KTV. So he lied that he was not well and promised to go with her sometime next time. He also earned a decent amount of points, which he should have dealt with. Zhuke's appearance before the appointed day greatly disturbs the young man. He began to recall past events and speculate about his father's disappearance. From what he knows, the map of Dragon Territory is closely related to him, but he doesn't even know what the map looks like, so he won't be able to find it. That was why he needed to enlist Elder Zhao's support, otherwise there was no chance for him to succeed. He was distracted from his thoughts by Mimi clinging to his promise to stop by their house sometime. Suddenly, a limousine pulls up, and the driver invites Lin Fan inside under the pretense that the chairman wants to see him. The guy agrees, says goodbye to Mimi, and leaves, and the girl realizes very late that the limousine looks suspiciously familiar. It was getting dark outside, and Balala had noticed that Mimi wasn't bad-looking during the ride. Lin Fan was outraged by the system's remark and changed the subject. He noticed that there were a lot of inconsistencies in his father's story, because it was very strange that the army turned a blind eye to it. He recalled his conversation with Xuan Wu, and wondered who had the resources to hide a national treasure worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Lin Fuan asked Balala if he knew where the Dragon Scroll was now, but all the information about it was encrypted. This made it clear to Lin Fan that the map was indeed valuable. Then he remembered the girl and KTV, who, before disappearing, had asked him to send her regards to Balala. He asked the system if many people knew about its existence. The answer was no, but Balala also wondered who the madam was, since he couldn't even check her stats. All this information led Lin Fan to conclude that he needed to quickly gain the Elder's trust so that he could show him the map and decide to calculate his points earned. Lin Fan had accumulated a whopping 312,000 points. Lin Fan thought about what he could spend it on, and decided that it was best to use it to fight Shuku. He, by the way, already chased the guy on his bike, not allowing the limousine to break away. He used his ability to shatter the machine to smithereens. Juk finally waited until Lin Fan was alone and demanded information about the location of the Dragon Territory map. But the man did not answer his questions and was behind the enemy in a second. Juk was surprised by the speed. Lin Fan used boxing skills and supernatural abilities, and Juk responded by summoning a true shield, but the impact was so strong that the shield was covered with cracks. Lin Fan used great healing on himself, completely healing himself at the cost of 200,000 points. Juk had no choice but to resort to his true strength. We are shown how Black Apple punishes Xiao Xiao for being absent from a volleyball match without a valid reason, and then moves to the battlefield. Lin Fan lies to Juk about having the dragon card, but he's not going to give it up. Bespectacled promises the guy that he will regret his choice, summoning a robot to the battlefield. It tries to attack Lin Fan, but he calmly dodges it, leaping high into the air. Deciding that the robot's weak spot is its eye, he breaks it, but is surprised to find Teacher William inside. However, Lin Fan didn't recognize him immediately. As it turned out, Juk had just hired him to deal with the kid. William was going to take revenge on Lin Fan for shaming him and throwing him out of his job. He was confident in his abilities because he was wearing Tian Hong armor, which not only makes him stronger, but also protects him from acupuncture. But Lin Fan had already pressed a dot on William's forehead, and he fell unconscious. Disappointed, Juk calls for new minions to help, and William's armor has shifted to one of them. It was King Long and Bai Hu, but Lin Fan didn't recognize Wu. Juk even thought that the boy was developing sclerosis, but the latter assured him that it was all because of too many new acquaintances recently. He also noticed that the summoned enemies didn't look the same as last time. As it turned out, after the failure of their mission, they were handed over to Juk for choiced experiments, which caused their strength to increase many times. King Long moved around behind the opponent in a second and tried to crush him with his hands, but Lin Fan, although not without difficulty, was able to hold on to his huge paws. Bai Hu didn't stand aside either. Taking advantage of the moment, she threw the knife at Lin Fan. Not expecting such a trick, the guy managed to dodge the attack with difficulty, but still managed to avoid it. Juk suggested that the guy give up, but the guy didn't even listen to him. While dodging the knife, Lin Fan pulled the skin, which further reduced his chances of winning. Balala suggested that he run away, but he ignored this too. Noticing that Lin Fan was peering under Bai Hu's skirt, Balala sent an electric shock through his body, which passed on to King Long as well. He lost his balance and, taking the chance, Lin Fan broke out of the trap, stretched his back, and was ready to fight. Balala, who had only just realized the guy's ingenious plan, was surprised by his genius. After getting out of King Long's clutches, he had time to catch his breath and use up the accumulated points. Lin Fan purchases the spring mushroom. We are shown how Tanlin continues to root out nightclubs and tell them how dumplings can change their lives, and then we are shown the battlefield again. Lin Fan still can't make up his mind to eat the spring mushroom. He decides to eat it with his eyes closed, but is prevented by an unexpectedly thrown knife. It was a distraction by Bai Hu, who snatched the mushroom out of the guy's hands and swallowed it. Lin Fan and Balala were shocked. Juk didn't have time to see what Bai Hu had snatched from Lin Fan's hand. The girl's body began to shudder, and she stopped in her tracks. Our heroes did not know what would happen next, because no one has ever eaten a spring mushroom without the support of the system. However, they didn't have time to think, as Kong Long was once again behind Lin Fan and intended to crush him with a single punch, but the latter managed to react and jumped back into the sky. Kong Long was stronger than the 2-star power of Lang Fan's skill. Fortunately, he was quite slow, which made the guy have every chance of winning. Lin Fan decided to buy another spring mushroom, but he didn't have enough money. Kong Long took advantage of the boy's confusion and tried to attack, but Lin Fan dodged the blow, landing on the giant's arm. Then Juk intervened, restraining the hero's movements. Kong Long was about to crush him with his heavy foot. Lin Fan somehow had enough strength to hold on to his leg, but there was nothing else he could do. Shuk explains that he was forced to resort to this ruse because Lin Fan's abilities are good enough to fight Konglong on equal terms, equal in strength to D rank. This kind of power is not typical for an ordinary student, which means that the map of the dragon territory is definitely in his possession. He once again demanded to hand it over, but Lin Fan continued to resist. Shuk had no choice but to activate the maximum power of Konglong. After that, Lin Fan no longer had the strength to hold the giant's leg. He held on with all his strength and started counting down. Shuk felt as if he was counting down the last seconds of his life, when suddenly a plate of hot dumplings flew into the air, which fell severely on Konglong's head. Their heat was so excruciating that Konglong couldn't help but cry out. Shuk at this moment couldn't understand what was going on here and where these dumplings came from. Lin Fan took advantage of the moment to escape from the trap. As it turned out, when Lin Fan jumped up in the air, he spun the roulette wheel in hopes of gaining a new skill, but as it turned out, the dumplings weren't bad either. While Konglong was writhing in pain and Shuk was trying to help him, Lin Fan went on the offensive. Using the 5-star boxing skill and supernatural power, he shattered Konglong's armor to smithereens. Shuk noted that such an escapade pulls at least the top of the D rank. Amidst the flying debris, Lin Fan noticed the cyber gloves designed by Elder Zhao's granddaughter. He asked where the Xiao family got these technologies, but Shuk was only amused by the navy of the guy and sarcastically suggested that he guessed 3 times himself. As Lin Fan spoke, he didn't notice Baihu sneaking up behind him and throwing the knife. Meanwhile, Xiao Mimi was returning to her home with the idea of asking her father for permission to invite a guest to the house. Right on the doorstep, she bragged about winning an international championship and then, as planned, asked him for permission. But her father wasn't going to listen to her and told her to shut up. As she got closer, she noticed that Kai, the gang leader Shin Hong, was sitting on the chair, and he called out to Mimi affectionately, and then, turning to a serious tone, accusing the Xiao family of trying to make money behind his back. And part-time C-class martial artist. He accused the Xiao family of trying to earn money behind their backs and threatened that if they did, their daughter would pay the bills. Xiao tried to tell him something about Mimi, but was interrupted by a bolt of fire in his face. The head of the family tried to intercede for his son, but it did not give any results. Kai continued to blame the Xiao family. He claimed that they had stolen billions of dollars from the gang, and they were no longer going to work with them. This situation was handled by Xiao Kong, who assured Kai that there was nothing to worry about. Kong invited Reshala into the next room, then locked the door behind him. Kai realized that he had been duped and demanded to open the door, threatening them all with a brutal reprisal, when suddenly he realized that he was not alone in the room. Frightening sounds started coming from inside, followed by blood flowing out. Something inside the room tore a hole through the head of the already dead Kai. The family's father and Mimi were shocked. This room was Kong's room. He stated that from now on, the Xiao family would not need the help of the gangs. Meanwhile, Lin Fan continued to fight Shuko. He deftly dodged Baihu's knives, but the latter managed to put him down on the floor. She sat right on top of him and tried to stamp the knife into his head, but Lin Fan managed to grab her hands. The guy noticed that something strange was happening to the girl. It was as if she was in love with Lin Fan. Balala explained to him that it was the spring mushroom that had affected her. Being eaten by a simple person, it causes the brain to produce a large number of hormones and is a powerful stimulant, which Balal, with the help of high technologies, is able to direct to the necessary area of the brain. But without the help of the system, the spring mushroom causes a hormonal explosion and an attack of nymphomania. From all this, it seems that Baihu loves Lin Fan so much that he wants to kill him. She begins to see him as a beautiful man. In the end, Lin Fan manages to get to his feet and knock the knife out of Baihu's hand. He tries to pull the girl away from him, but she won't budge. He can't do it because her shoes turn out to be reactive armor. Shuk was watching the entire scene, taking a picture of the couple on his phone. He knows that Lin Fan wants Elder Zhao's granddaughter, so he threatens to send him the photo if Elder Zhao doesn't give him the card. Lin Fan wonders how Shuko is related to the Elder's granddaughter. Memories came flooding back, and even tears came. At that time, Zhao Lingming was not yet the CEO of the Zhao Group, and Zhuku did not join the Tan Hun gang. They both studied at the Washu department. Zhu Qian, whose real name was Zhuka, was an elegant and kind young man with excellent martial arts skills that surpassed those of his comrades. Lingming complains to her teacher that Zhu Qian has started courting her. It didn't seem unpleasant to her, but it had a lot of oddities. After a while, Lingming went to watch the fight that Zhuka was currently participating in. He easily defeated his opponent thanks to his ability to control people. Teacher Lingming praised Zhukai's skills, but she wasn't happy about it herself, and she thought that if the rules of dueling allowed her to use armor, she would be able to beat him. Zhu Qian was a fine man, but it was his excessive weight that spoiled everything, which Lingming didn't like so much. However, something else soon became clear. Zhuka was caught stealing women's underwear. Due to the theft of underwear, Zhuka was expelled from the university. After going from a student to a criminal who was beaten up every night, he decided to change. He lost weight and changed his name from Zhu Qian to Zhuka. When he reappeared at Shenzhou University, he had already become the most handsome guy on the entire street and intended to pursue Lingming with dignity. But when he went inside, he heard bad news. He was her relative, and Mr. Zhao was his uncle. He was desperate and didn't know what to do, but then he met the gang leader Xian Hong and joined them. After returning from the dream world to reality, he finally answered Lin Fan's question. Lingmin is the girl he can't get. He activated the bomb on Bai Hu's belt. She climbed on the guy's shoulders and was going to blow herself up with him. There was an explosion, but they both survived. As it turned out, Lin Fan had used acupuncture on Bai Hu. The girl fell unconscious. Lin Fan felt a strange liquid on his hair and reached out to check. He still didn't know what kind of slime it was. Zhuke was puzzled at this time. Lin Fan easily defeated Konglong and Bai Hu. He understood why the elder had appointed the boy as his son-in-law. It's all about his exceptional skills and the Dragon Territory map. As he walked back to his bike, he chided Lin Fan for not obeying him. He ripped the wheels out of the bike, causing fire spikes to appear on them. Now he intends to kill Lin Fan. The fire wheels headed towards the hero, scattering fireballs around. One of them landed on Konglong, who screamed in pain again. But suddenly, one of the wheels sliced his armor in half, then headed towards Lin Fan, intending to do the same to him. After dodging the attack, the guy began to analyze the situation. He tried his best to destroy the armor of Konglong, while a fire wheel passed through them like a knife through butter. The wheels came at Lin Fan again, but he dodged them. However, they abruptly changed their trajectory, and there was no time to dodge. He ordered Balala to exchange something urgently, and a walking stick appeared in his hands. With the help of it, he was still able to beat off the wheels. While he still had time, Lin Fan decided to try to assess the situation again. Zhuke was willing to kill even his own man for the sake of defeating him. His attacks had high speed and strength, and also had an unpredictable trajectory. Lin Fan recognized Zhuke's strength. The bespectacled man noticed that Lin Fan suddenly had a walking stick and asked where he got it from. The guy tried to lie about having a magic bag, but that only made Zhuke angry. He pointed the wheels at Lin Fan again, but he was out of sight. Unexpectedly, Zhuke started getting hit out of nowhere. It was all about a level 2 item invisibility clothing. A pretty exhausted Zhuke is going to use a forbidden technique. Zhuke activates the shield to defend against Lin Fan, but Lin Fan continues to attack bespectacled. Gang member Qian Hong wonders where the guy got so much strength. He must find a way to resist invisibility, otherwise this battle is doomed to lose for him. Zhuke uses the people management skill to grab Bai Hu. Lin Fan noticed this, but didn't do anything and tried to attack Zhuke again, but Zhuke exposed the girl in front of him without her underwear on. Lin Fan recoiled, leaving a trail of blood running from his nose. Thus, he gave away his location, and there was no point in hiding anymore. Zhuke immediately aimed the fire wheels at the boy, but Lin Fan managed to stop them with his cane. However, it was useless. Zhuke strengthened the wheels and still managed to injure Lin Fan. The guy fell to the ground without strength. Zhuke asked him one last time, where the map of the dragon territory was located, but the boy didn't even listen to him. He was seriously injured due to the explosion and didn't have enough healing points. Juk didn't like Lin Fan's silence. He threw Bai Hu's body on it and was about to cremate them. He promised that the cremation would be very painful. Summoning his remaining strength, he began to reproach Juk for inhumanity. After all, he killed his partner for the sake of victory. In response, he told the guy the girl's backstory. As it turned out, her parents were harassing the Tianhong organization, and Juk was ordered to burn them down. However, after seeing how beautiful Bai Hu was, he decided to spare her life. And using Taoism and drugs, he brainwashed her and made her forget the past, which quickly landed her in third place in the gang. However, she had already failed twice and Juk was tired of playing with her, so he decided to cremate her along with Lin Fan. He pointed the fire wheels at them, and Lin Fan responded by summoning his staff. Meanwhile, students from Lin Fan University were discussing his victory in an international volleyball match. They watched his interview and decided to post it on the social network, putting a couple of effects. Over time, the video with Lin Fan became very viral, and it reached one of the boys' classmates. He, by the way, managed to win the heart of Brittany. She asked him why he wasn't sleeping, but he told her not to ask too many questions about his best friend. He also added that if Brittany wants to stay in China, she needs to learn a lot, including the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Brittany didn't like it very much. Meanwhile, Lin Fan was somehow holding back the fire wheels. He doesn't want to die yet, because he's still a virgin. After saying that, points started being added to him out of nowhere. There were more and more of them. Juk had already decided that he had burned his opponent, but the latter came out of the flames unharmed. Moreover, he managed to completely heal. Juk couldn't believe his eyes. His flames could burn down an entire house, but they couldn't take down a boy. As it turned out, Lin Fan's points suddenly increased by more than 500,000. This was due to the fact that thousands of people were watching the video with his participation right now. Lin Fan once again bought the invisibility robe, as well as 2 heals. Juk was more serious than ever. He was still lucky, because Lin Fan didn't have long-range attacks, which allowed the bespectacled man to fight on equal terms with the guy, but Lin Fan was not a fool and used the limousine thrown at Juk as a long-range attack. Juk was more serious than ever. He was still lucky, because Lin Fan didn't have long-range attacks, which allowed the bespectacled man to fight on equal terms with the guy, but Lin Fan was not a fool and used the limousine thrown at Juk as a long-range attack. Cursing, Juk blocked the surprise attack. As he was about to counterattack, he summoned his fire wheels, but Lin Fan was already behind him. He grabbed the wheels and pressed them against Juk's face. All this is due to the fact that the first minute when using the Great Healing is the period when the carrier does not receive damage. This blow might have been fatal to Juk, but he was saved by the protective robe from the fire. However, it wasn't long before the cloak was already playing to Lin Fan's advantage. The guy grabbed the bespectacled man by his clothes and didn't let him escape. Juk used the genuine Daoist shield, but it was absolutely useless. Juk was dumbfounded by such power. He asked where he got it from, and Lin Fan said that it was all because of his rage, although in fact he had once again upgraded the ability of supernatural power. Juk's strength is running low, and he uses the 1,000 miles teleportation technique to summon a small portal and pull out a trunk. Lin Fan was surprised by this turn of events. The Great Healing invulnerability period only lasted for a minute, so he didn't know how to get rid of this weapon. A barrage of bullets flew towards Lin Fan, but help suddenly arrived. The blonde stranger deflected all the bullets with his katana, and also cut down Juk's cannon. In addition to this, a crust of ice appeared at the site of the cut. This stranger who saved Lin Fan was China's first swordsman, Yulong. Even though he and Lin Fan had never met before, he felt like he had seen him somewhere before. Meanwhile, Juk turned to ice in a second, and Yulong turned to Lin Fan. He said that the young man was very similar to his father, but Lin Fan thought that he was referring to his mother, which confused the swordsman. Yulong explained that Lin Fan's father was a friend of his. Lin Fan immediately started asking him about his father's disappearance, but the swordsman demanded his patience. He said that the father only wants to know that his son is on the right path. This was the least that Yulong could tell Lin Fan right now. Lin Fan then asked how he knew Yulong, even though they had never met. In response, the swordsman suggested that the boy become his disciple. Lin Fan wasn't sure if he wanted to become Yulong's disciple, so he asked him for time to think. The swordsman was confused by this, because many people want to become his disciples, but they are all waiting for a refusal, and this guy, having received a direct invitation, still dares to think about it. Yulong explained to the guy that it would be very difficult for him to fight against Suzaku and her employer named Krin, the senior member of the Tianhong group. The Zhao family might protect him, but what would he do if he faced one of them one-on-one? Lin Fan changed abruptly and, kneeling down, agreed to become Yulong's disciple. Such fickleness confused him. However, the real reason why Lin Fan agreed was because Yulong knew his father and could tell him important information about him. Yulong accepted Lin Fan's decision and announced the start of training. Starting tomorrow, the guy will have daily training sessions. Lin Fan wasn't happy with this schedule, but he didn't have time to object either. Yulong disappeared as quickly as he appeared. Right after the swordsman disappeared, a car pulled up in front of Lin Fan. It was Elder Zhao. The old man asked what the young man was doing here, because he had sent a driver to pick him up. But the questioning look quickly turned to amazement when he saw another beautiful girl that Lin Fan was about to throw into the car. Meanwhile, the Qiao family was at odds. Mimi didn't like what her brother did, because it was illegal. He didn't even try to challenge it, and instead threatened the girl with harassment. Xiao Kong was ready to destroy the Zhao family. At this time, the elder and Lin Fan were discussing what had happened, but the old man preferred to watch the unconscious naked girl rather than investigate anything. Pretending that he had been listening to Lin Fan all this time, he asked him an incredibly important question. Is he still a virgin? After receiving a positive response, he generously agreed to guard the girl in order to avoid the temptation of the young man. Lin Fan realized that everything was not so simple here and demanded to tell the old man's real purpose. He, in turn, decided to tell the young man about his love affairs at the age of 9, but Lin Fan quickly interrupted him and changed the topic to a more important one. He was wondering where the Tianhong group got the Zhao armor from. The elder knew the answer to his question. He recalled the time when Wen Xiaoman stole their secret. The contents of that flash drive turned out to be the latest developments in the chips of the Huaxin group, which has been bothering them for 10 years. Their performance was in no way inferior to chips from the United States, and even the Octagon, a program for decrypting information, could not decipher the design drawings. Furthermore, Xiao Yizia doesn't have the technology to produce chips, so he only made an alarm system. However, this morning, all of the vehicle's armor suddenly flew away without even being tracked by radar. Then, the Qiao family announced the launch of their new product tomorrow night. The elder is sure that Xiao Yizia broke the blueprint's encryption and released the chip within a day. This means that there are excellent people behind Xiao Yizia. However, on the last page, the CTO used 2-layer encryption. They will be encrypted for 100 years, because he believed that people are not yet ready for such technologies. The elder is concerned that Xiao Yizia could decipher even this, since their abilities are far beyond their comprehension. Therefore, they must prevent this as soon as possible. The elder ordered Lin Fan to enter all the troops and go to Xiao's house to capture him. They also left an assistant on the road to wait for the police to turn Zhu in. But suddenly, the ice that bound him cracked. While Lin Fan's friend eats pizza with Brittany, he and Elder Zhao arrive at the house. There, they were met by Lingming, who was not happy to see a stranger in their home. She accused the guy of perversions, such as going to the women's bathroom, using KTV women, and touching her feet. But the elder stopped this farce, because they had more important questions. They needed to deal with Xiao Yizia, who was involved in the loss of Lingming's armor. Besides, Poison Hand is still unconscious, and they can only rely on Lin Fan. The boy himself was also not eager to communicate with the girl. He asked her to show him what the map of Dragon Territory looked like, promising to leave instead. But Ling was against it, because the card is only for the Zhao family and Lin Fan is not eligible for it. That answer got on the guy's nerves. He puts his hand behind her head and tries to explain that he's not the person she thinks he is, but all he gets in return is a knee to the groin. The elder tried to defend the boy, confirming his words that he wasn't as bad as Lingman thought, but then a maidservant came up to them with a question about which room to put the girl that Lin Fan had dragged into the house. The old man quickly switched sides, blaming Lin Fan for everything. He was shocked by the sudden change. Lingming was furious at the news. She thought that Lin Fan wanted to seduce two girls at once. The girl wasn't even going to listen to his excuses and simply kicked the guy out on the street. Before going home, Lin Fan decided to stop by a small shop nearby to buy milk. As he wandered around the grocery department, he thought about Lingming's behavior. He didn't understand why he had to take care of Pandora's box if Zhao's granddaughter was acting like such a pig. A girl nearby noticed Lin Fan. He looked familiar, and she immediately reached for her phone. Plucking up her courage, she approached him and asked if he had won the volleyball championship today. Lin Fan was taken aback by her beauty. When he didn't answer, the girl moved even closer, standing almost directly in front of him. She pulled out her phone, which had a viral video of him on it. Then the guy finally realized that he got 590,000 points during the fight, just thanks to this video. He noticed that one like earned him 1 point. It looked like a small number, but the number of likes easily exceeded 500,000. He realized that he had stumbled upon a gold mine, and he urgently needed to find a way to use this method of earning money. Lin Fan confessed to the girl that he didn't understand how to use this app. She was surprised by such responses and asked how it became popular then. Lin Fan didn't have an answer to that question. However, the girl was not upset. She gave the guy her business card, and then her boss called her and ordered her to go to him. She said goodbye to her new acquaintance and ran to the car, when suddenly Lin Fan received an urgent task from the system. The car was booby-trapped, and Lin Fan needed to remove the bomb as a matter of urgency. He immediately called out to the girl, but she had already started the car. The car was booby-trapped, and Lin Fan needed to remove the bomb as a matter of urgency. He immediately called out to the girl, but she had already started the car, and was looking at the guy in bewilderment. However, oddly enough, nothing happened. This confused Lin Fan for a second. The onlookers who passed by also didn't understand what was going on and why the guy was shouting, and assumed that Yachen was Lin Fan's girlfriend, but she left him. Lin Fan started to inspect the car. The experience gained from watching movies told him that you need to look at the car from below, and there he really found a bomb. There were less than 3 minutes left on the timer. He warned passers-by about the bomb and ordered them to run, but they took his advice and ran away in a panic. Yachen was about to run away too, when suddenly the bomb under the car beeped. Lin Fan lowered himself under the car and was horrified to see that 3 out of 5 spots lit up under the timer. He immediately ordered the girl to stop. She turned to him in bewilderment. Lin Fan gave the command to take 2 steps back, and she did so without question. 2 dots stopped burning. It was all clear to the guy. It was a motion sensor. If Yachen takes 5 steps away from the car, the bomb will explode ahead of time. He explained this to the frightened girl, after which tears flowed from her eyes. She was desperate, thinking that they were dead, but Lin Fan reassured her that they still had 2.5 minutes left to neutralize them. He hugged the already desperate girl and wasted no time getting under the car. He activated the abilities Perspective Eye and Technogeny, thanks to which he began to see the necessary wires. He needed to cut the red wire, and then the bomb would be diffused. He quickly removed the bomb cover and prepared to cut. Meanwhile, the timer has already reached 1 minute and 8 seconds. One of the onlookers called the police, who immediately arrived at the scene of the call. A police officer who already knew Lin Fan called anyone who tried to defuse a bomb on their own a fool. Because of this, Lin Fan lost his concentration and snapped at the woman, calling her a jerk, when suddenly he saw something strange with his perspective eyes. After that, someone picked up the car. Yachen couldn't believe that someone could pull this off. Brittany's time in China was coming to an end, and she had to head back to America. She was so attached to Lin Fan's friend that she left him with tears in her eyes. In such a short time, they had become very attached to each other. Meanwhile, Lin Fan, with active, forward-looking eyes that can see through walls and clothes, was looking at the police officer who had arrived. Suddenly, the car fell sideways. Startled, Yachun couldn't believe it. As it turned out, the whole point is that he saw a naked police case thanks to his ability, which made him excited. This very much resembled the function of a jack, which was required in order to facilitate the work of a person. The car, after all the coups, was 4 meters away from Yachun. If she moves even further away, the 5th lamp will light up and the bomb will explode ahead of time. Meanwhile, there was less than a minute left on the timer. Everyone was alert. Suddenly, the car swung in the opposite direction from Yachun. This made the heroes even more nervous. On top of that, a passing bug landed on the car, making it even more unstable. And then the car started to fall. The terrified Yachun was already sure that the explosion would not be avoided, when Lin Fan rushed to the car at high speed and sent a single kick in the direction of the girl. Yachun was so shocked that her eyes almost popped out of her head. Meanwhile, there were 49 seconds left on the timer. This incredible trick was also seen by ordinary passers-by who thought that Lin Fan was from the Wushu department. Temporarily forgetting about the bomb, the guy reproached the policeman for distracting him with her shouting, which almost caused him to explode. She began to make excuses, not seeing her guilt. She got the bomb report and came straight in. The girl believes that Lin Fan himself is to blame for climbing to the bomb without experience. Their cursing was interrupted by Yachun, who reminded them that the bomb still hadn't been defused. Lin Fan started toward the car, but a police officer stopped him. He was looking at her with the ability to see through her clothes still activated, which made him feel very embarrassed. The girl insisted that she defuse the bomb, because the guy is just a student with no experience. The cop confidently picked up the wire cutters and headed for the car. However, when she found herself in front of the bomb, she realized that she did not understand their device at all, and the only thing that would help her now was intuition. She was about to cut the blue wire when Lin Fan suddenly grabbed her hand. He informed her that he was a candidate from the Wushu Education Department who had been recommended by the president of Shenzhen University and knew a lot about bombs. However, she wasn't convinced. The guy had to buy the ability Poor Look to change his mind. However, the ability also affected Yachun, who asked for a hug. Only Fan, of course, could not refuse such an attractive offer. However, as soon as he hugged her, he saw something strange. Deciding that he was imagining it, he finally cut off the red wire. There were only 2 seconds left on the timer. The girls froze in place, waiting for the result of cutting the wire. Boom. Lin Fan had startled them both with the sound of the bomb, but in reality, it was defused. Lin Fan's quest was completed, and he received a gift bag. The police officer was really angry at such practical jokes and almost burst into tears, thinking that her life was over. She hit the guy hard with her hammer. He asked to be careful, because the bomb is still in his hands. At this time, Yachun was incredibly happy that they were saved. She thanked Lin Fan from the bottom of her heart. While still fighting off a police officer with the ability to see through his clothes turned on, he noticed one important detail that shocked him so much that he dropped the bomb. They were lucky that the cop's reaction was enough to notice it and catch her. She yelled at Lin Fan, but he didn't care. He realized a terrible thing. While he was focused on defusing the bomb, he didn't pay attention to it, but then he remembered how his classmates had talked about it. As it turned out, Yachun is a man. At this time, the police officer was wondering why the criminals were counting down the time instead of immediately detonating the bomb. Lin Fan mentally agreed with her, but suddenly realized that the criminals hadn't gone far because they had just planted a bomb, which meant that the culprit was somewhere among the passers-by. He scanned them all with his special vision and noticed that one of the men in the raincoat had red and blue wires. He immediately realized that this was the criminal they were looking for and reported it to the police. The criminal started to run, and Lin Fan and the police officer started to chase him. The guy did not understand why he ran. It happened unconsciously. They ran for a long time through the streets of the city until the criminal turned the corner. He tried to take advantage of the surprise effect and threw a metal plate with spikes at them. The police officer noticed a strange sign on the man's arm and immediately realized that their business was bad. They disappeared around the corner and started coming up with a plan. The policewoman pushed her buttocks directly towards Lin Fan, causing his sword to hit her, and she asked him to step aside. According to the police officer, their opponent was incredibly strong and dangerous, so they have only one chance to attack. She tore out all the wires of the bomb and threw it at the man. The man threw his weapon at the bomb, threw it to a safe distance, where it exploded. Lin Fan and the policewoman were surprised by the maneuver. The girl disappeared around the bend again and pressed up against the guy, which caused the sword to crash into her again. She ordered him to get rid of it, because students are not allowed to walk around with cold weapons. After that, she called for backup, telling the headquarters that she had come across a shadow. Lin Fan was familiar with the name. As Old Man Zev said, they are related to the Dragon Territory map. Later, the police officer explained that the Shadow is a criminal organization that operates in China. They have committed many terrorist acts, but still no one knows who their master is. Their killers are divided into 5 stars from low to high. Even the lowest stars are at least D-class martial artists, and it takes 10 trained experts to capture one of them. The mark on the back of the man's hand and the use of an illegal weapon make it clear that this person is wanted. This is the Star Shadow assassin Golden Drop. When KTV was destroyed, Lin Fan was dealing with Xiao and the Tan Hong group, but these guys are much more dangerous and unpredictable. The police officer ordered Lin Fan to run because knowing too much information would be dangerous for him. However, he objected because she had already leaked absolutely all possible information. The girl made a mistake. Meanwhile, Golden Drop stated that he had to kill both of them because they had seen too much. He threw his weapon at them, and right after that, the woman pulled out her gun and retaliated with a wall of bullets. However, all of them were repulsed. The policewoman couldn't believe that this was only a D rank in front of him. Unexpectedly for everyone, Golden Drop released a knife from his sleeve, which went right through the woman's arm. The thought that she was going to die here and now appeared in her mind. Golden Drop once again throws his weapon in her direction, when suddenly Lin Fan throws the woman into the wall and himself dodges the attack. However, he did not calculate the force with which he threw the policeman, and she was stunned. Golden Drop turned his attention to the boy, but he easily dodged all the attacks with the dive weave, a boxing evasion technique. Closing the distance, he punched the man in the stomach. He couldn't believe that an ordinary guy could have such a strong stroke and asked who he was. Lin Fan gave his name as Baba. Golden Drop, with sweat on his face, claimed that it was impossible. Lao Tzu killed more people than he ate rice. He believed that there was no one else who was stronger than Lao Zai. However, in response to the chatter, he once again hit the man and then admitted defeat, 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 and then admitted defeat.